Chapter 1153. Thinking of this, Miao Jinshan suddenly felt that he was daydreaming. It was obvious that the Moon Empress was afraid that Lin Yuan would encounter danger and had specially assigned this expert to him. Even if Lin Yuan really agreed to lend it to the Miao family, he would never dare to use it. After the youth's clear and pleasant voice rang in Miao Jinshan's ears, it did not stop. I've heard about the blood oath battle between Sky City and the Zheng family. The Miao family's beast creation garden has suffered quite a lot in order to help the Zheng family. 2 veteran emperor-level experts actually died in the extreme arena because of other people's matters. If you want to cultivate another 2 emperor-class powerhouses, without law crystals that contain pure law power, I really don't know how long you'll have to wait. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the faces of the Miao family members present changed. The deaths of Han Tianhe and Lu Yenshan could be said to be a sore spot for everyone in the beast creation garden. The wound had yet to stop bleeding, so Lin Yuan made a move to widen the wound. Moreover, Miao Qi could sense faint contempt in Lin Yuan's words. This hint of disdain made Miao Qi feel very uncomfortable. Lin Yuan had said that the Miao family's beast creation garden did not have law crystals that contained pure nomological power, which was equivalent to breaking the relationship between the Miao family and the Bamboo Monarch. He was the culprit who caused the relationship between the Miao family's beast creation garden and the Bamboo Monarch to fall apart. Lin Yuan's words were like poking at his spine. Miao Qi could not be blamed for overthinking things. At this time, Miao Qi found that many direct descendants of the Miao family were already looking at him coldly. Since Lin Yuan could not take out the golden lotus brocade stalk, Miao Jinshan no longer wished to keep Lin Yuan in the Miao family. The Miao family had lost 2 veteran emperor-level powerhouses, and this was the time when the people's hearts were in chaos. Miao Jinshan was really afraid that Lin Yuan would say something else that would cause the Miao family's already scattered hearts to fall apart even more. Just as Miao Jinshan was about to hint Lin Yuan to leave the Miao family, Lin Yuan continued. However, if we have a law origin crystal that contains pure law power and a peak-level martial emperor expert with a good foundation, it will be much easier for your Miao family to obtain an emperor stage powerhouse. After saying that, he flipped his hand, and a diamond-like law crystal appeared in his hand. Upon seeing the law origin crystal in Lin Yuan's hand, Miao Jinshan's eyes immediately widened. The Miao family's beast creation garden was a pinnacle faction that focused on creation masters, so it was very easy for them to nurture emperor-class experts. Furthermore, most of the Miao family's beast creation garden's resources were spent on collecting law crystals of various elements and using them to nurture emperor-class experts. The Miao family had at least 10 peak-level emperor realm experts. Among them, the top few were only a step away from becoming an emperor-level powerhouse. This step was almost equivalent to a law crystal. Thus, in Miao Jinshan's eyes, the law crystal in Lin Yuan's hand was equivalent to an opportunity for the Miao family to have another emperor-class expert. Originally, Miao Jinshan had some opinions about Lin Yuan. I gave you 20,000 laws origin crystals. It's fine if you don't trade the golden lotus brocade with the beast creation garden. He was still digging up the scars of the beast creation garden. How despicable. However, after Lin Yuan took out the law crystal, Miao Jinshan felt that Lin Yuan was closer to him than his own grandchildren, Miao Zhua and Miao He. Apart from Miao Jinshan, the few peak-level emperor realm experts of the Miao family were even more excited. This was because there was a high chance that this law crystal would be spent on them. These peak-level emperor realm experts of the Miao family had been stuck at this stage for a long time. If they could seize the opportunity, they wouldn't even need to brood too much. They would very likely become emperor-class experts immediately. Furthermore, with family head Miao Jinshan around, they would definitely be able to successfully overcome the tribulation of creation. Staring at the law crystal in Lin Yuan's hand, Miao Jinshan, who couldn't bear to blink, smiled like a chrysanthemum. Miao Jinshan opened his mouth and probed. Lord Lin Yuan, did you find any other resources you want in the treasure vault? I'll send someone to get it for you immediately. Lin Yuan shook his cuff-shaped amber button diamond face storage box and said, I chose the space-shattering stone. Miao He had already given it to me when I chose the space-shattering stone. I didn't continue after I reached the 23rd floor of your treasure vault. I'm not sure what's on the next 7 floors. If you want to exchange for this law origin crystal, you can take a look at this list. The Miao family's beast creation garden's resources can't all be in that treasure vault, right? If you have the items on this list, I can consider exchanging the law crystal in my hand with you. The list in Lin Yuan's hand had been organized by him a long time ago. It was the spiritual ingredient that Lin Yuan had selected after analyzing true data that was most suitable for his phase to improve their quality. Since Lin Yuan's phase were on the optimal evolution path, these spiritual ingredients were either expensive or rare. Therefore, these spiritual ingredients that were used to improve their quality were either expensive or rare. Anyway, they were extremely difficult to obtain. Lin Yuan had searched the market many times. Apart from the mountain-containing embryo that he had coincidentally encountered at the Indigo Azure Sea market, he had not encountered any other spiritual ingredients on the list. Miao Jinshan took Lin Yuan's list and took a closer look. He immediately pursed his lips. The Miao family's beast creation garden did not have many of the items on this list. The Miao family's beast creation garden once had many of these spiritual ingredients. However, these spiritual ingredients with obvious properties and outstanding effects were immediately used after being obtained. Fortunately, the Miao family's beast creation garden still had some of these spiritual ingredients in stock. Lord Lin Yuan, the Miao family still has 5 mountain-containing embryos left. The spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma did not grow in the beast creation garden, but we have a bag of spores from the spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma. These spores are active, and after special nurturing they can grow into the spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma. However, the cost of nurturing them is very high. If Lord Lin Yuan doesn't mind, I will give all the spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma spores to Lord Lin Yuan. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan immediately revealed a smile. 5 mountain-containing embryos were enough to improve the source sand's quality from Fantasy 2 to Fantasy 4. If the quality of these 5 mountain-containing embryos was good, it was not impossible for the source sand to reach Fantasy V. The spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma was a kind of heaven and earth fae that could condense the mind and soul. This kind of heaven and earth fae that could condense the mind and soul was most suitable for Genius to improve its quality. If Genius ate a mature spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma, it might not necessarily reach Fantasy 2. However, if he had the spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma spores, Lin Yuan could use them to nurture a large number of child rabbits. This would allow Genius quality to increase from Fantasy I to Fantasy V. Many of the items on the list were not available in the Miao family's beast creation garden, which was completely within Lin Yuan's expectations. The Miao family's beast creation garden needed 2 of these items, and the quantity was not small. This was truly a pleasant surprise for Lin Yuan. End of this chapter. Chapter 1155. Lin Yuan's actions caused everyone in the room to stare at his hands. Their minds were also swaying with the movement of Lin Yuan's hands. The 6 law crystals that Lin Yuan took out shocked Miao Jinshan. Based on the number of law crystals that Lin Yuan took out, Miao Jinshan knew how much the Moon Empress doted on Lin Yuan. Since Lin Yuan could take out so many law crystals at once, it meant that he definitely had more in stock. Miao Jinshan's heart ached when he thought of Lin Yuan's exorbitant demand for the previous law crystal. However, Miao Jinshan's heart immediately became abnormally excited. 2 Emperor-class experts could completely fill the gap of Emperor-class experts in the Miao family's beast creation garden. Now, the Miao family had exactly 7 pinnacle Emperor-class experts. Presumably, Lin Yuan had decided to take out 6 more law crystals based on the number of pinnacle Emperor-class experts in the Miao family. The Miao family could obtain 7 newly advanced Emperor-class experts in one go through the transaction with Lin Yuan. Not only did the Miao family's top combat power not decline, but it could also be said that it had improved. Even if the 7 newly advanced Emperor-class experts could not compare to Han Tianhe and Lu Yenshan. In battle, Han Tianhe and Lu Yenshan could easily kill the 7 newly advanced Emperor-class experts. However, the mobility of 2 veteran Emperor-class experts could not compare to the mobility of 7 newly advanced Emperor-class experts. He was the benchmark of the Miao family's top combat power. With him around, the Miao family's top combat power could be guaranteed. Thinking of this, Miao Jinshan became more generous when he spoke again. Resources could be accumulated again if they ran out. Moreover, with 7 newly advanced Emperor-class experts, the Miao family's beast creation garden could develop mercenaries. They could snatch the jobs of the 5 Thearchs mercenaries. The 5 Thearchs mercenaries in Coiling Dragon Valley had always been on good terms. If the Miao family's beast creation garden could effectively attack the 5 Thearchs mercenaries, it could be considered that they had regained the dignity of Coiling Dragon Valley's creation masters. However, Lin Yuan's next words made Miao Jinshan and all the pinnacle Emperor-class experts present turn gloomy. Don't be so happy yet. My law crystals are not that easy to get. The reason why I took out so many law origin crystals is to give you guys a choice. If I trade these 6 law origin crystals, including the previous one, I need to take away all the creation earth veins that the newly advanced creation breed phase have descended after the creation calamity. You can choose to agree or disagree. If you don't agree, then the deal between us will end here. If you agree to the deal, apart from the 7 creation earth veins, I want to exchange each law origin crystal for 5 myth 3 phase bodies. These 5 myth 3 phase require their bodies to be at least 90% intact. I just made a trip to the Miao family's treasury and know that your family can take out 30 myth 3 phase bodies that are at least 90% complete. Alright, my time is precious. Before Miao He returns, you can have some time to think about it. Miao He, come back. After I got the mountain-containing embryo and the spores of the spirit wisdom purple Ganoderma, you didn't reply, so I took it that you chose to give up on the deal. Sorry for disturbing you for so long. I should go back now. After saying that, he used his hand to play with the 6 law crystals in his palm. The Miao family members' expressions were terrifyingly repressed. Taking away all the creation earth veins would be a very serious blow to any creation breed Fae. Moreover, it was a Fae that had just become a creation breed. Without the foundation of the creation earth veins in the law world condensed by a newly promoted creation breed Fae, after that, it would basically be impossible to take another step forward. This deal was equivalent to using the Fae's chance to become a creation breed in exchange for a future without light. Moreover, each exchange would require 5 complete myth 3 Faes. The Miao family members felt that Lin Yuan was too black-hearted. This harvesting of leeks was simply unbearable. However, he was holding something that the Miao family members could not resist. Finally, when Miao He happily stepped to the door of the reception room, Miao Jinshan did not ask those pinnacle emperor-class experts for their opinion and immediately made a decision. Ahi, go to the treasury again and ask your nanny Hong to pick out 30 of the most complete myth 3 phase bodies. Upon hearing Miao Jinshan's order, Miao He was stunned and felt that the atmosphere in the room was somewhat wrong. Moreover, what exactly was it that was worth using 30 complete myth 3 phase to exchange for? However, when he saw the expression on his grandfather's face, Miao He did not dare to stay and ask more. He hurriedly turned and continued running toward the treasury. Upon seeing that Miao Jinshan had made a decision, Lin Yuan strode toward him. He placed the 6 law crystals in Miao Jinshan's palm and said, "Actually, I'm not an emotionless person. I just got in touch with Miao Zhua and I think he's a good person. How about this? Even pinnacle emperor-class experts can't guarantee that their phase will successfully become creation breeds if they use the law crystals. I can make a promise here that I can let the Miao family's 7 pinnacle emperor-class experts transform into emperor-class experts today. The extra law crystals will be considered as my gift to the Miao family." Lin Yuan's words eased the expressions of Miao Jinshan and the Miao family members. Lin Yuan's promise was tantamount to letting the Miao family not bear the risk. Otherwise, the 7 law crystals that were unlucky would only let 1 or 2 of the Miao family's 7 pinnacle emperor-class experts become emperor-class experts. Miao Jinshan certainly could not accept the Miao family's offer of so many resources. After leaving the Miao family's residence, Lin Yuan looked at the sky and found that it was already evening. The royal capital's sky was red and magnificent. Purple and red dyed each other and intertwined in the sky. It made the sun, which had not yet completely set, appear less bright. Lin Yuan stretched his back and felt the breeze of early spring. He felt that he had gained a lot from this trip to the Miao family. When Lin Yuan rode Little Black to the return from faraway manor, the Miao family members also looked happy. It had been painful when they had traded the resources, and it had also been painful when Lin Yuan had taken away the creation earth vein. However, after seeing the 7 new emperor-ranked powerhouses, the pain disappeared and was replaced by boundless ambition. Among the 7 pinnacle emperor-class experts, only 4 had lived up to expectations, and the remaining 3 had spent more law crystals than Lin Yuan had. In the Miao family's opinion, this transaction was simply profitable. In the Miao family's hearts, Lin Yuan had also changed from an evil person to a good person. Among them, the one who was most grateful to Lin Yuan was definitely Miao Zhua. Miao Zhua had been demoted because of Lin Yuan, and now he had risen because of Lin Yuan. The ups and downs had made Miao Zhua somewhat suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. Subconsciously, he only felt that Lin Yuan was his savior. If Lin Yuan knew what Miao Zhua was thinking, he would definitely think that Miao Zhua had awakened some strange attribute. At that moment, the Radiance Federation's matters, big or small, had come to an end with Lin Yuan. Although Sky City had just defeated the Zheng family and was about to enter a state of rapid development, Lin Yuan had arranged everything that needed to be arranged. However, he had arranged everything that needed to be arranged. Everyone only needed to perform their respective duties to maintain the normal operation of the Sky City's faction machine. Lin Yuan finally had time to rush out of the Radiance Federation and go to the outside world for real training. It was destined to be a path of blood and fire. Chapter 1156. Unlike the Miao family's joy, in the Whale Ocean Trade's main residence, an elegant middle-aged man with broken eyebrows was playing chess with a gentle-looking man. The elegant middle-aged man, Di Wanqing, and the gentle-looking man were frowning. The gentle-looking man had a pair of prominent ears, which was rather comical. However, no one had ever dared to mock this man with prominent ears. This man with prominent ears was the Whale Ocean Trade's Myriad Flags family head, Di Wantian. Just like his name, Di Wantian was a godlike existence to the Radiance Federation's unofficial factions. The Whale Ocean Trade's function could be said to be the hardest to develop among all the factions. The Whale Ocean Trade's function was for overseas trade, and the most basic prerequisite for overseas trade was to possess an island whale. To nurture an island whale, a massive amount of creation master resources would be required. Even with sufficient resources, at least 10 mid-grade class 4 creation masters would be required to nurture an island whale day and night. They would need to work together for 2 to 3 years. This amount of resources was not something that many of the pinnacle factions could easily afford. Some factions that didn't need the island whale would usually not choose to nurture the island whale, which was a strategic fey that cost a lot, in order to expand their current advantages. The Whale Ocean Trade's function was difficult to start, but after it really started, as the island whale carried out trade between the various federations, the Whale Ocean Trade controlled more and more resources from the other federations. This made the Whale Ocean Trade a target that the other factions would fight to curry favor with. In terms of raw strength, the Whale Ocean Trade might not be comparable to the Rhine life form and the Brahma insect cage, which were also among the top 3 factions. However, the Whale Ocean Trade was definitely the faction that was fawned over the most among the top 3 factions. At this moment, Di Wantian looked at the light attribute law crystal fragment and laid on the chess piece in his hand. He then threw the chess piece into the chess pot. Upon seeing his big brother's gloomy expression, Di Wanqing knew that his big brother did not intend to continue playing. Therefore, he also threw away the chess piece embedded with the dark attribute law crystal. Since big brother isn't in the mood, we won't play anymore. According to the information from the spy hidden in the Miao family's beast creation garden, should we continue with our plan against the Miao family? Upon hearing Di Wanqing's words, Di Wantian looked at Di Wanqing. It was obvious that Di Wanqing had hit the nail on the head, and Di Wantian was also thinking about it. Di Wantian asked Di Wanqing instead of directly voicing his thoughts. Wanqing, if it were you, what would you decide? Di Wanqing touched his broken eyebrow and said after thinking for a long time. After thinking for a long time, he said, if it were me, I wouldn't be surprised. Di Wantian wasn't surprised to hear Di Wanqing's answer. He motioned for Di Wanqing to continue. Seeing the look in Di Wantian's eyes, Di Wanqing spoke like a military advisor. Brother, D. King said D, creation family spy brother, D, and said, creation brother I, and man, of man, At this point we have to think deeply. This could very well mean that the Moon Empress disciple has made some sort of deal with the Beast Creation Garden, or it could be the Moon Empress herself. Now, I suggest that the Moon Empress disciple and the Beast Creation Garden reach some kind of deal. Now I suggest that we only maintain the cooperation with the Miao family, and let the Miao family use our only remaining Gardner Konjac seed to cultivate the Gardner Konjac seedling. Let's see if we can find the lost seed of Gardner Konjac with the help of the Gardner Konjac. If we can find it, everything will be fine. If we can't, it will be considered as giving the Lord an explanation. Otherwise, the Lord might cut off the deal with us. If we cut off the deal with the Lord, all our years of hard work will be in vain. Now, third sister is only one step away from the last step. If we don't kick that last step out, third sister won't be able to meet outsiders in her current state. As he spoke, Di Wanqing's face revealed a trace of regret. Di Wanqing thought to himself. Back when he was negotiating with Miao Jinshan, he should have played some tricks. Or perhaps he could have increased the pressure on the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. That way, the Beast Creation Garden would not be able to take the initiative to contact the Moon Empress disciple. Di Wantian usually had the final say in the Whale Ocean Trade. Di Wantian was the one who made the decisions for important matters, and Di Wanqing would execute them. However, Di Wantian would always ask for Di Wanqing's opinion before making a decision. This time, Di Wantian was prepared to go all out. During the process of the Whale Ocean Trade and the official faction, Cultivation Garden's attitude toward the Whale Ocean Trade had changed slightly. This meant that Tian Feng, one of the 13 highnesses, might have sensed the abnormality in the whale ocean trade. Being noticed by a highness made Di Wanyan feel like there was a thorn in his back. He felt that there was not much time left for the whale ocean trade and Third Sister. If Third Sister couldn't take another step forward during this period of time, then the whale ocean trade would stop. However, if Third Sister took another step forward, the current situation of the Radiance trade would be rewritten. The whale ocean trade would also jump out of the scope of the top factions. The Moon Empress, Bamboo Monarch, and Chef Supreme had such fame and power. It was because they were all Class 5 creation masters. Now, Third Sister had vaguely found the path from a pinnacle Class 4 creation master to a Class 5 creation master. Even though this path was against the heavens, every step on this path was like dancing on the tip of a blade. However, no one in the whale ocean trade would give up this opportunity to change the faction's fate. Now that the Miao family was involved with the Moon Empress disciple, it was impossible that the Moon Empress disciple had made such a huge investment without a purpose. In the future, the Beast Creation Garden and the Moon Empress disciple would definitely have some contact. Even if the Miao family announced that they were going into seclusion, they couldn't possibly not meet the Moon Empress disciple. Perhaps the whale ocean trade, which had already attracted the attention of one highness, could no longer afford the attention of another highness. After thinking about it, Di Wanyan stood up and said, "I'm going to see Third Sister. The cooperation with the Miao family will continue. As for the other actions, let's postpone them for now." That lord sent a message saying that he will make a trip to the Radiance trade. If I want Third Sister to take the final step, I might have to look for that lord for help. While speaking, Di Wanyan's eyes flashed with a glint that was filled with a strong sense of scheming. It was unknown if Di Wanyan was scheming against the Miao family or another highness. Or that lord in Di Wanyan's eyes. Chapter 1157. After Lin Yuan returned to the mansion, he immediately looked for Listen. He had started preparing the materials needed to go to the Divine Wood Federation a few months ago. Although the preparatory work had been handed over to Listen, Lin Yuan had also inspected the results of his preparations several times. After Lin Yuan found Listen, he took out 30 diamond face storage boxes and said to Lin Yuan, "Young master, these 30 face storage boxes are basically filled with all kinds of materials." "Young master, these 30 face storage boxes are basically filled with all kinds of materials. I have more time to prepare the materials for you to go to the Divine Wood Federation than to prepare the materials for the Swamp World." When preparing the materials for the Swamp World, even though time was tight, I didn't take this part of the materials needed to go to the Divine Wood Federation. It can be said that these materials are very complete. "Young master, what do you think of these materials I prepared?" As he spoke, Listen's face was full of joy and reverence. Listen's temperament was very calm, and he had maxed out his interpersonal skills. Thus, when talking to anyone, Listen would be able to speak with propriety. This was the first time Lin Yuan had heard Listen ask for praise since he had known him. Lin Yuan saw the smile on Listen's face and the look of worship in his eyes. Lin Yuan knew that a large part of the reason for Listen's current performance was the destruction of Indigo Azure City's Zheng family. Now that the hatred in Listen's heart had finally been avenged, it could be considered an explanation for his deceased family. Lin Yuan was not going to check the materials that Listen had prepared for him. This was because Lin Yuan recognized and trusted Listen's ability to handle matters. However, since Listen now showed an expression of asking for praise, Lin Yuan carefully checked the materials he had prepared. After checking, Lin Yuan secretly marveled in his heart. It could be said that the comprehensive materials Listen had prepared completely exceeded Lin Yuan's expectations. The materials prepared by Listen might not be enough to build the infrastructure of the Divine Wood Federation's forbidden area. However, it would not be a problem to build a rough prototype. Lin Yuan praised Listen, making him as happy as a fool. Then Lin Yuan solemnly said to Listen, "Listen, I still need you to personally go to Indigo Azure City and hand over all the Zheng family's luxury goods resources from Zheng Kaiyan. Then transfer as much of the Zheng family's Indigo Azure City's luxury goods resources to the royal capital. After receiving the luxury goods resources of the Zheng family, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can officially start making profits in all aspects. After the Heavenly Craft Pavilion's production increases, I can use the royal capital as the center and sell luxury goods to all of Radiance. When I get to the Divine Wood Federation, I will explore the situation of the Divine Wood Federation and see what their demand for luxury goods is. If the Divine Wood Federation also has a demand for luxury goods, we can trade with the Divine Wood Federation even without going through the Island Whale." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's instructions, Listen nodded solemnly. Lin Yuan had told him about Zheng Kaiyan's punishment before. Lin did not have any hatred for Zheng Kaiyan. Because even though Zheng Kaiyan had the blood of the Zheng family flowing in his veins, he was also a part of the Zheng family that wanted to be destroyed. Lin Yuan's selling to Quan Huiyao had aroused Lisan's strong motivation. This would also be Lisan's next goal. After Lisan left, Hu Quan said excitedly to Lin Yuan, "Lin Yuan, I have chosen the spirit craftsman. This time we've picked the best from the worst. The ones we've chosen are all pretty good." After saying that, he winked meaningfully at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan knew what Hu Quan meant by picking the best from the worst. The spirit craftsmen accepted by the Heavenly Craft Pavilion were all top-notch in terms of business, and there was no such thing as picking the best from the worst. Hu Quan was referring to the loyalty of these spirit craftsmen. The spirit craftsmen selected now were far from the 35 spirit craftsmen in the swamp world. As soon as they heard about the mission, no matter how long they had to live in seclusion or ask for the reward, they immediately responded. Although these spirit craftsmen had everything, they were also trustworthy. "Uncle Hu, I may not be able to bring all of these 50 spirit craftsmen over. After the spatial tunnel is set up, I can be sure that the spatial crystals in my hands can allow me to go back and forth between the royal capital and the Divine Wood Federation a few times through the spatial tunnel." While speaking, Lin Yuan thought to himself, "I really should find some phase that can produce spatial spiritual materials. Otherwise, the number of spatial crystals condensed by the ethereal jellyfish's gold ability, wandering fishing, would be really limited. It would definitely not be able to meet my needs between the Divine Wood Federation and the Radiance Federation." It was all thanks to the treasure artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac that Chef Supreme had given me. Otherwise, it would not just be a problem to bring people to the swamp world through the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone's Klein Hub. Even if he went to the Divine Wood Federation through the spatial tunnel, Lin Yuan could only bring 1 or 2 people at most. Fan Hanxing had already sent over the Brahma insect cage's dark crystal beetle, and the 3 dark crystal beetles were raised in Lin Yuan's Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. They began to absorb the pure spirit chi in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone and produce shells. Lin Yuan had reported to the Moon Empress that he was going to the Divine Wood Federation to train, and he had also branched out a total of 100 spirit containment peonies in the Pure Land of Bliss. Everything in the Radiance Federation was operating safely, and Lin Yuan did not need to spend any effort. Lin Yuan only needed to ensure that he could bring Wenyu over every 7 days or come back to hold a celestial council. Lin Yuan was going to the Divine Wood Federation to broaden his horizons and increase his strength. Lin Yuan and Lu Jie had the same goal in 2 years, which was to fight for the position of Radiance Envoy. Therefore Lin Yuan had asked Lu Jie long ago if he had plans to train together. Lu Jie was Sky City's white-clothed major domo and was in charge of the white-clothed followers. Now that the white-clothed followers had been taken out by Duan He to train, Lu Jie had nothing to do. Therefore Lu Jie gladly chose to go to the Divine Wood Federation with Lin Yuan to train together. In fact, Lu Jie had always had a dream in his heart, which was to follow Lin Yuan and perform his duties as a retainer knight. To be the sword in Lin Yuan's hand and the shield in front of him. Even though Lu Jie had become His Majesty's disciple. Nevertheless, the thoughts and dreams in his heart had not changed. That was because the dawn in the desperate situation had been deeply integrated into the depths of Lu Jie's soul, giving birth to an unshakable belief. Lin Yuan first returned to his room to take a few more clothes and put them in the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Then he used black to carry Hu Quan to the entrance of the underground space behind the return from Faraway Manor. Lin Yuan found that Lu Jie had been waiting at the entrance since some time ago. He was commanding the Insect Queen's shield ladybugs to help the spirit craftsman transport the stone slabs. Upon seeing Lin Yuan come over, Lu Jie no longer helped these spirit craftsmen. Instead, he put away the Insect Queen and came to Lin Yuan's side. Chapter 1158. Lin Yuan, the number of insect-type carcinoma phase that my Insect Queen controls has basically reached a bottleneck. For the time being, there is no need to go to the land of spirit suppression and let the Insect Queen control the other insect-type carcinoma phase. I have applied for leave from Master. I don't have anything else to do before the Radiance 100 sequence. When you return to the Radiance Federation, I can always help you guard the Divine Wood Federation. Currently, Lu Jie was wearing a half-body armor made of ordinary materials. Lu Jie looked like an ordinary adventurer when he wore it. Upon seeing Lu Jie's attire, Lin Yuan felt that he really did not look like an adventurer. Instead, he looked like a young master from a big family who was out for a vacation. Before going to the Divine Wood Federation to train, he had already done his homework. He had a certain understanding of the entire Ahiwan continent in advance. His and Lu Jie's appearances were different from those of the natives of the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation. It was just like how he could recognize at a glance that those people in the evolving water world dimensional rift were not from the Radiance Federation. The natives of the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation could also easily see that Lin Yuan was an outsider. However, he did not need to deliberately use those phases that could change his appearance to deliberately adjust his facial features. This was because the Deep Lush Federation's people also had the same appearance as the Radiance Federation's people, black hair and black eyes. However, it was said that the people of the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation were not friendly to the people of the Deep Brahmin Federation who were good at trade. There were many who attacked the Deep Brahmin Federation's trade groups to steal their resources and shift the blame onto them. With Lu Jie and his looks, it would not be easy for them to mingle in the Divine Wood Federation. Lin Yuan had his own goals for going to the Divine Wood Federation or the Agon continent. The three major federations of the Shockwave continent were neighbors to each other and formed a unique civilization. This civilization was completely different from the Radiance Federation's civilization. Lin Yuan wanted to try and see if he could integrate the resources of the Divine Wood Iron Hammer and Deep Brahmin Federations. With the help of the Divine Wood Iron Hammer and the resources of the Deep Lush Federation, Sky City would grow rapidly. Then, Sky City would have the ability to fight against the legendary Pagoda Cannon. Of course, this was only Lin Yuan's goal. After all, he had not really set foot on the Divine Wood Federation's land yet. While walking in the underground tunnel, Lin Yuan watched the spirit craftsmen carve beast totems on the tunnel's stone walls. On the totem, there were wolf beasts howling at the moon, tiger beasts hiding in the mountains, deer beasts hiding in the forest, and elephant beasts plucking trees. Each ferocious beast had its own form in the hands of a spirit craftsman. Lin Yuan previously had 100 heaven and earth phase, the Sun Reflection King Lotus. These Reflection Sun Monarch Lotuses had been nurtured by Master Hong Xin and had been placed in the underground space. The roots of the newborn Shining Sun King Lotus were tightly connected to the roots of the Shining Sun King Lotus mother plant in the hidden Flood Dragon Lake, using the sunlight absorbed by the mother plant. The entire underground space was as bright as day. As he looked at the Reflection Sun King Lotuses that were emitting radiance, Lin Yuan felt that it was a pity. Although the Reflection Sun Monarch Lotus could absorb sunlight and store it, but when it was released again, it was no longer pure sunlight. A part of the sunlight as nutrients had already been absorbed by the Reflection Sun King Lotus. Therefore, the light emitted by the Sun Reflection King Lotus could not be considered as a sunny day, and gray could not absorb it. Otherwise, the 99 Reflection Sun King Lotuses could absorb sunlight together and quickly raise gray's level and the power of weather transformation. At that moment, Hu Quan did not know if Lin Yuan was sighing at the Reflection Sun King Lotus or the wall. Hu Quan subconsciously thought that Lin Yuan didn't like the 100 beast totems carved on the wall, so he quickly explained. Lin Yuan, take a closer look at the 100 beast totems carved on the walls. Half of each beast totem is carved with triangular lines. I've specially designed and combined these triangular lines to make the wall stronger. Upon hearing Hu Quan's explanation, Lin Yuan replied with a smile. Then when we get to the Divine Wood Federation, why don't we just copy the wall totem designed by Uncle Hu? Right now we've built an underground space under the manor. Firstly, it's to shield us from detection. Secondly, it's for convenience. However, the Divine Wood Federation is different from the Radiance Federation. Everywhere is our territory. We still need to enhance the defensive capabilities of the construction over there, and we also need to improve the anti-detection capabilities. Hu Quan nodded excitedly. The more Lin Yuan requested, the better the spiritual materials he would use, and the more challenging it would be for him. At that time he would have a greater sense of accomplishment after completing the task. He walked all the way to the end of the underground space. Lin Yuan found that the place he had specially requested was built much more sturdy than the outside. Obviously, Hu Quan had spent a lot of effort on this. Lin Yuan summoned the ethereal jellyfish and let it sense it. As a result, the ethereal jellyfish sensed for a long time before it faintly sensed a faint spatial fluctuation inside the wall. Hu Quan said confidently, "Young master, I've added a lot of spatial soft silver threads inside this wall. Apart from leaving the spatial soft silver needed for the Fey carriage, I've used all the remaining spatial soft silver threads here. I've also specially looked for the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer to sense it. Neither of them are spatial type Feys, so they can't find the abnormalities inside the mountain without circulating their spiritual power. Even when Endless Summer circulates spiritual power, she can only feel that the interior of the mountain is hollow after touching it with her hand to sense it. Lin Yuan listened to Hu Quan's words and then looked at his expression. Lin Yuan immediately heard another layer of meaning in Hu Quan's words. If he wanted to have such a good anti-detection effect over at the Divine Wood Federation, he would need to get more spatial soft silver. Now, Lin Yuan no longer had such a metal spiritual material. However, Lin Yuan had also prepared some spiritual materials produced in the Radiance Federation that had a spatial isolation effect. He could also go to the Divine Wood Federation to collect those spiritual materials that the Radiance Federation did not have. Many of the Divine Wood Federation's phase were unfamiliar and unknown to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan first took out the spatial mother shellfish's half-shell from the spirit lock spatial zone. He then ordered the ethereal jellyfish to release its exclusive skill, Space Tunnel. In an instant, Lin Yuan felt a violent spatial fluctuation appear in front of him. A crack suddenly appeared in the space in front of him. Lin Yuan immediately threw the spatial mother shellfish's half-shell into this crack. When the spatial mother shellfish's shell was in Lin Yuan's hand, it was like an ordinary silver ornament and did not react. However, after it was thrown into the torn space, it was activated by the spatial power. The spatial power released by the spatial mother shellfish's half-shell immediately penetrated the spatial distance between the Radiance Federation and the Divine Wood Federation. End of this chapter. Chapter 1159. In the end, the crack expanded into a huge arch that was 3 meters wide and 2 meters tall. The spatial energy on the arch door condensed into one magnificent silver rune after another. More and more beautiful silver runes appeared, directly freezing the huge arch door formed by the spatial crack here forever. At that moment, the spatial tunnel from the Radiance Federation to the Divine Wood Federation finally opened. He could finally make his first trip to the Divine Wood Federation. Lin Yuan did not have many spatial spiritual ingredients on hand, so he could not be an empty driver on this trip no matter what. He needed to store Hu Quan and Lu Jie in the treasure cave golden toad skin and stomach sack. Furthermore, looking at the size of the remaining space, he decided to accommodate a few more spirit craftsmen. Therefore Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan and Lu Jie, "Uncle Hu, Brother Lu, you two will have to suffer inside this prized artifact for a while, otherwise you will not be able to make it through this spatial passageway. When we reach the Divine Wood Federation, I'll let you out immediately." As soon as he said that, he suddenly recalled that Feng Shuang, Old He, and Hu Tian, who were the Class 4 creation masters that he had taken in from the Zheng family, were still inside the treasure cave golden toad. Even if Feng Shuang, Old He, and Hu Tian swore an oath with willpower runes. However, the three of them had just followed him, so they did not have Lin Yuan's full trust. In order to ensure their safety, Lin Yuan immediately let the Void Shadow Devil escape into Lu Jie's shadow. Only then did Lu Jie and Hu Quan enter the treasure cave golden toad skin and stomach pouch. Then he went to the entrance and called in a few spirit craftsmen that Hu Quan had selected in advance and let them enter the treasure. After barely accommodating 10 people, he took out the spatial crystal condensed by the ethereal jellyfish's gold ability, Wandering Fishing. Ever since the ethereal jellyfish reached Diamond X/Legend, it had condensed 24 spatial crystals. He threw a spatial crystal into the spatial tunnel that had just formed in front of him. After waiting for a moment, he found that the spatial tunnel did not have the slightest reaction. He knew that this was because one spatial crystal simply could not meet the conditions to activate the spatial tunnel and teleport. 1, 2, 4. When Lin Yuan threw the 8th one, the silver symbol on the spatial tunnel seemed to move. A huge suction force sucked Lin Yuan into the spatial tunnel. When he came out from the other end of the spatial tunnel, he sat on the ground. He felt as if the world was spinning, as if there were 100 little ducks flying above his head. Lin Yuan, who was still in a daze, could not help but curse. Damn. Super long-distance teleportation is too uncomfortable. After resting for about 5 minutes, Lin Yuan recovered from the vertigo of the ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation. Lin Yuan had been able to recover so quickly thanks to the impurities in his body. If an ordinary person were to pass through the space tunnel, they would probably faint from the ultra-long-distance teleportation. After recovering from the dizziness, Lin Yuan immediately released Hu Quan, Lu Jie, the Zheng family's 3 Class 4 creation masters, and 5 spirit craftsmen from the treasure cave golden toad. The 10 of them had to stick close to each other inside the treasure cave golden toad artifact. If not for the fact that they were both wearing clothes, the distance between them would have become negative. This situation was simply torture. He did not want Hu Quan and Lu Jietai to suffer inside. After releasing everyone from the treasure cave golden toad artifact, Lin Yuan finally had time to explore the foothold that Mystic Moon had found for him. It was also the location where he had set up the spatial tunnel in the Divine Wood Federation. Lin Yuan looked around and saw solid stone walls all around. Looking at the surrounding environment, Lin Yuan really could not see anything for a moment. However, he knew that he should be in a crypt at this time. Regardless of whether Lin Yuan was satisfied with the place that Mystic Moon had found after exploring the surface, just the layout in front of him showed that Mystic Moon had put in a lot of effort. When he looked up, he found that the entrance to the crypt seemed to be blocked by something. Faintly, sunlight shone down from above. It was with this faint light that Lin Yuan could see the surrounding environment. The surrounding walls were almost embedded with the platinum spiritual material, void-cut tungsten. Void-cut tungsten was a metal spiritual material that could isolate spatial detection in the Radiance Federation and was mostly used to build Fey vehicles. It was also embedded in the walls of high-class creation masters' breeding rooms to isolate detection. Although the void-cut tungsten was also a metal spiritual material that shielded detection, it was not on the same level as the spatial soft silver. The spatial soft silver's effect crushed the void-cut tungsten in all aspects. In the Radiance Federation, spatial-type metals were rarely circulated in the market. Any ordinary spatial-type spiritual material could be sold at an absolute high price in the Rare Life Form Pavilion. Lin Yuan had a deep understanding of this. He heard that the Radiance Federation's spatial spiritual material prices were so high mainly because of Ostrich Logistics' monopoly. Anyway, if Lin Yuan wanted to buy spatial spiritual material goods in the Star Web's Rare Life Form Pavilion, he would not be able to buy many of them even if he spent a lot of money. Mystic Moon must have set up the void-cut tungsten on the walls because she was afraid that the spatial tunnel would be detected when it opened. Looking at the faint light cast down from about 40 meters above his head, Lin Yuan felt that Mystic Moon had dug this hole very well. The spatial tunnel opened underground, and his base in the Divine Wood Federation could be expanded with this hole as the core. Hu Quan looked at the void-cut tungsten on the wall and clapped his hands. Lin Yuan, the void-cut tungsten on this wall is at least 1,000 kilograms. When the time comes, I'll let my jade-slaying saber mantis cut these void-cut tungsten into pieces and mix them with the soil to condense them into stones. Using these stones mixed with void-cut tungsten to build the underground palace is enough to achieve the most basic shielding effect. In the future, if you want to strengthen the shielding effect, find some corresponding spiritual materials and embed them into the wall. While speaking, Hu Quan had already begun to reach out to touch the rock wall to feel the rock wall's quality and composition. His blood was boiling and he was ready to go all out. Hu Quan, who was probing the wall, shouted at the 5 spirit craftsmen standing behind him. "You 5 brats, come and help me. Split into 5 directions and dig out some stones from the walls of the cave. Look at the ratio of sand, stones and crystalline materials in this rock wall. When I touch this rock wall, I always feel that the sand content in the rock wall is too high. If we build an underground palace, we can't count on these rock walls to bear the weight. We have to use metal spiritual materials to build the beams." Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan threw the materials of the 30 diamond Fey storage boxes that Listen had prepared to Hu Quan. "Uncle Hu, we don't need to worry about the materials you mentioned. With the spiritual materials of these 30 diamond Fey storage boxes, it shouldn't be a problem to build a basic underground palace with an area of 1,000 square meters." End of this chapter. Chapter 1160. Lin Yuan paused and continued, "It's just that I need too many spatial spiritual materials to pass through the spatial tunnel at once. It's just that I need too many spatial spirit materials to pass through the spatial passageway. I only have enough spatial spirit materials on hand to go back and come back again. The next Celestial Body Conference will begin in 3 days. I have to make a trip back. Therefore, Uncle Hu can only lead the 5 of them in the early stage." Lin Yuan felt a little helpless. He would have to endure ultra-long-distance teleportation in the future, so it was fine to suffer that dizziness. He would get used to it after experiencing it a few more times. However, the spatial spiritual materials needed to pass through the spatial tunnel far exceeded Lin Yuan's expectations. Lin Yuan decided that his next goal in the Divine Wood Federation would be to focus on obtaining spatial spiritual materials. Otherwise, after a few trips, he would not even be able to satisfy the Celestial Council that happened once every 7 days. The Celestial Council was very easy for those who contracted the northern and southern constellations. As long as they entered the dream at a specific time, they could be introduced to the Celestial Council. However, Those who sat on the 12 ecliptic constellations' main constellations needed to enter the Celestial Council with Wen-Yu's guidance before they could use the Celestial Council's functional astral throne. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan nonchalantly reached out and patted the surrounding walls. The progress of building the underground palace will be a little slower with 5 brats. However, as long as there are enough materials, we can build the general layout of the underground palace in half a month, not counting the details. But all this is based on the premise that the underground sand and stones are cleared. Without a special fay to clear out this underground space, it would be good if the few of us could dig out 50 square meters of space in a day. Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan smiled slightly and replied, "That's simple. That's simple. Leave the matter of expanding the underground space to me. But before we do it, we need to go up and see the environment." After saying that, Lin Yuan nodded at Lu Jie. Upon seeing that, Lu Jie immediately summoned the insect queen and let it enter production mode. The insect queen turned into a huge insect nest and produced 10 hurricane owlet moths in a moment. After the 10 hurricane owlet moths were produced, Lu Jie let the insect queen return to the appearance of a fairy. Then each of the 10 hurricane owlet moths grabbed a target and used their wings to raise a hurricane to blow away the cover covering the crypt. It brought Lin Yuan and the others to the surface. It was already a silent night in the Radiance Federation, but it was only noon in the Divine Wood Federation. It was the time when the sun was at its best. After being brought out of the cave by the hurricane owlet moth, Lin Yuan was shocked by the scene before him. Lin Yuan felt that he was in a primitive forest, and all sorts of tall plants entered his eyes. There was a huge tree less than 10 meters away from him. The tree was nearly 30 meters tall. Even if 5 people spread out their arms, they might not be able to hug the trunk of the tree. There were many such towering trees, almost one every 50 meters. Even in the gaps between these giant trees, there were many small trees and all kinds of plants growing savagely. At this moment, a little squirrel ran over in a panic from afar. Upon seeing Lin Yuan and the others, the little squirrel was startled. It then ran to Lin Yuan's side and sniffed his scent. Then it ran to Lin Yuan's shoulder like a wisp of smoke. Suddenly, a ferocious beast's roar came from afar. Lin Yuan saw a long-haired dog-like fey that was over 1 meter long and covered in blackish-brown fur chasing over. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan immediately used Morbius True Data to investigate this long-haired dog-like fey. After investigating, Lin Yuan found out that this long-haired dog-like fey was a Bronze 4/normal mottled hound. Its exclusive skill was Mange Poison. Mange Poison. After the skin scars hidden under the long fur are broken, infectious pus will flow out. When the pus touches the target, it will infect the target, causing the target's skin to itch and fester. It could be said that this bronze mottled hound had a very disgusting exclusive skill, and Lin Yuan did not want his skin to be infected with the Mange Poison. Upon seeing Lin Yuan and the others, the mottled hound barked non-stop. It was as though it was threatening Lin Yuan and the others. However, with so many people on Lin Yuan's side, the mottled hound obviously wanted to retreat. However, when it saw the squirrel lying on Lin Yuan's shoulder, it bared its fangs. Saliva flowed out of its open mouth, and it assumed a posture that it was ready to attack. Upon seeing this, Lu Jie commanded the hurricane owlet moth to blow the mottled hound away. A hurricane sent the mottled hound into the sky, and it was unknown how long it would take for it to land again. After the mottled hound flew into the sky, Lin Yuan tilted his head to observe the little squirrel on his shoulder. If it was in the past, Lin Yuan naturally would not use True Data to investigate this inconspicuous little squirrel. However, now that he was in the Divine Wood Federation, fays were different due to the continent's different species. Lin Yuan had never seen this squirrel or the mottled hound in the Radiance Federation, so he was naturally interested. After investigating, Lin Yuan did not find any data at all. This meant that this little squirrel was not a fey at all. This discovery surprised Lin Yuan. This little squirrel was not even a fey, so how did it run past that swift mottled hound? Lin Yuan tentatively extended his hand to his shoulder, wanting to touch this little squirrel. As a result, this little squirrel immediately became vigilant and did not give Lin Yuan a chance to touch at all. The little squirrel agilely hid from Lin Yuan and started to hide from him. Just as Lu Jie wanted to help Lin Yuan catch the little squirrel, Lin Yuan circulated his spiritual power and waved his palm at the little squirrel. In the end, the little squirrel jumped onto Lin Yuan's palm as though it was clinging to him. It began to roll on his palm. Lin Yuan could only circulate his spirit chi for an instant. Thus, when the squirrel jumped onto Lin Yuan's palm, it could no longer sense the pure spirit chi in Lin Yuan's palm. The little squirrel was so anxious that it spun around on Lin Yuan's palm and curled up its paws before taking small steps. His small eyes were filled with doubt. While the little squirrel's eyes were filled with doubt, Lin Yuan's eyes were also filled with doubt. This little guy's reaction to pure spiritual energy was way too sensitive. He had only circulated his spiritual energy for a short period of time, so even the insect queen, who had always been sensitive to pure spiritual energy, did not sense it. Lin Yuan thought to himself when he saw the squirrel clinging to him. "All right. Since you're clinging to me and not willing to leave, then stay with me." Lin Yuan planned to have a good look at this little squirrel's special features when he had time. He would try to channel pure spirit chi into this little squirrel's body and see if it would obtain abilities and transform into a fae-like genius and Chimey. Chapter 1161. While Lin Yuan was observing the little squirrel, Hu Quan had already checked the surroundings. Hu Quan said in surprise, "Young master, the surrounding trees are all ironwood. These ironwoods are far more useful than metal scraps after they're crushed. Ironwood is sticky, and when mixed with gravel, it can make the gravel as flexible and malleable as metal. The landscape here is a forest, so there must be a water source deep underground. Ironwood fragments mixed with sand and stones can be spread on the outermost layer of the underground palace to effectively keep out water. Also, ironwood won't rust and corrode like metal spirit materials for a long time." Since Hu Quan had said that, Lin Yuan immediately shook his sleeves. The amber button-shaped source sand landed on the ground and turned into sand grains that drilled into the ground under Lin Yuan's feet. The source sand was no longer a gold/fantasy breed fae. He had already upgraded the source sand to diamond I/fantasy 2. Therefore, it was a piece of cake for the source sand to change the underground environment. Sand creation was the most basic ability of the source sand. Soon, the guard sand swept up a large amount of sand like a giant dragon and swept up the land under Lin Yuan's feet. With the portal formed by the space tunnel as the center, it quickly crushed the sand and stones 10 meters below the ground. At the same time, the source sand extracted the roots of the ironwood from the gravel. As the sand flowed, all the ironwood trees within a 2-kilometer radius were gathered together. These ironwood were the materials that Hu Quan would need to build the underground palace. At the same time, Lu Jie let the 10 hurricane owlet moths probe in 10 directions. Lu Jie sensed what the 10 hurricane owlet moths were seeing through his mental connection with the insect queen. He then took a piece of paper and a pen out of his diamond face storage box and drew a simple map of the surroundings. In the process of commanding the source sand to transform the underground environment, he also let it transform the surface environment. However, Lin Yuan's modification of the ground environment was only 1 meter thick. The remaining 9 meters were soil mixed with sand and gravel. Once he got busy, 4 hours had passed unknowingly. During this period he released Little Black and let it use spirit injection on him and Lu Jie every few minutes. Blackie was now a diamond/fantasy breed fae. Therefore, even if he wantonly urged the source sand to change the terrain, the spirit chi would always be maintained at a half-full state. He had already transformed the surface and underground topography within a 2-kilometer radius. Lin Yuan's modification of the surface was also very meticulous. This was because the remodeling of the surface of the earth would affect Inua's progress in nurturing the bone lotuses. It was undoubtedly more convenient for the bone lotus to move around in the sand than in the wet and sticky soil. In essence, the bone lotus was a derivative of the silver essence, and it fed on souls. There was no need to obtain nutrients from the soil. After working for 4 hours in a row, Lin Yuan's body had maintained sufficient spiritual power. However, he still felt very tired after controlling the source sand to transform the surface and underground terrain for 4 hours. Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan, who was making metal racks with the 5 spirit craftsmen, "Uncle Hu, you can go underground and build the framework of the underground palace now. You guys have to work hard during this period of time. You must build the framework as soon as possible. Otherwise, if there are a few heavy rains and the water seeps into the ground, making it wet, it will be very dirty and troublesome for you to carry out your work." After saying that, Lin Yuan looked at Feng Shuang, Old He, and Hu Tian, who had been standing behind him and did not dare to make a sound. "The 3 of you go and help too. Hu Tian, your face can play a big role in the process of building the underground palace's framework. Feng Shuang, Old He, your phase might not be very useful, but you can help out a little." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Feng Shuang, Old He, and Hu Tian were shocked. From the conversation between Lin Yuan and the others, the 3 of them knew that they were in the Divine Wood Federation. Although the 3 of them were Class 4 creation masters, they had good insight. However, in their understanding, the only way to cross the Federation was through the island whale. Obviously, Lin Yuan had not come to the Divine Wood Federation through the island whale. This made the three of them feel that Lin Yuan had become more mysterious. Moreover, Feng Shuang had recognized Lu Jie when he had just entered the treasure cave Golden Toad. Hu Tian and Old He had also recognized Lu Jie after he had summoned the Insect Queen. The three of them were secretly guessing in their hearts. Could it be that Lu Jie, a Radiance 100 sequence member, had also joined Sky City? Was he a member of Sky City? While the three of them were still in shock, their minds were spinning rapidly. The trio had been thinking about how to strike up a conversation with Lin Yuan and express themselves. In a new environment, Lin Yuan did not bring any creation masters and only brought 6 spirit craftsmen. The three of them thought that they were about to be put in an important position. However, not only had Lin Yuan not put them in an important position, but he had also asked them to be the spirit craftsmen's assistants. This was the first time the trio was doubting if a creation master was a noble occupation. However, even if the three of them were unwilling to assist the spirit craftsmen, they had no choice but to carry out Lin Yuan's orders. Hu Tian, who believed that he had the best relationship with Lin Yuan and was most valued by Lin Yuan, asked carefully, "Master, are we going to hide from the world here from now on?" Lin Yuan shook his head in response. "This is not a place for you three to hide from the world. The three of you don't have any devious thoughts. Just focus on the work you've been assigned. Once we reach the place of seclusion, we will need to do these chores. I don't lack creation master resources here. The three of you might be class 4 creation masters, but doing these chores will be more useful to me than doing other things." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Tian, Feng Shuang and Old He were completely dumbfounded. The trio finally understood that Lin Yuan did not take their identities as class 4 creation masters seriously at all. How many creation master resources did Sky City have? That was why Lin Yuan was willing to let the three of them not concoct the spirit fluid but work hard here. Feng Shuang gritted her teeth and summoned her Land Emperor Crocodile. She asked the Land Emperor Crocodile to take the initiative to transport the metal frame that Hu Quan and the others had just set up in 4 hours. Seeing that Feng Shuang was the first to move, Lin Yuan said, "Feng Shuang, you did well. Feng Shuang, you did well. As a reward, when your Fei evolves, regardless of whether you need to undergo the world cleansing or the creation tribulation, I will send someone to help you get through them safely." While speaking, Lin Yuan threw 5 Earth-type Heavenly Maiden-grade elemental pearls to Feng Shuang as a reward. Chapter 1162. Upon receiving Lin Yuan's praise, Feng Shuang's face immediately revealed an abnormally surprised expression. He repeatedly expressed his sincerity to Lin Yuan. In addition, Lin Yuan's reward of 5 Heavenly Maiden-grade elemental pearls made Hu Tian and Old He envious. He put in all his effort and threw himself into the work of assisting the spirit craftsman. Lu Jie, who had been drawing a map with the help of the hurricane owlet moths, suddenly spoke. "Lin Yuan, I have almost mapped out the area within 50 kilometers in 4 hours. According to my detection, there is a town 50 kilometers to the east. There are a large number of natives of the Divine Wood Federation living in this town. There's nothing special in the west and south within 100 kilometers. It's still a lush forest. However, the water vapor in the environment 50 kilometers to the south is clearly much heavier. There should be a relatively large inland lake in the south. Head north for 90 kilometers and you'll reach the edge of the forest. The environment outside the edge of the forest is obviously much more desolate, as if there is a clear dividing line. One end of the dividing line is overgrown with trees, while the other end is terrifyingly barren, with almost no vegetation growing. Less than 5 kilometers away from the demarcation line, I saw a large number of tents stationed there," Wang Zhong said. "There are all kinds of stalls outside these tents. It's like a huge market. The vendors at the market all have black hair and black eyes. Most of the sellers look rough and they wear leather jackets. From the looks of it, it should be the caravan of the Deep Lush Federation at the edge of the forest, using the specialties obtained from the Divine Wood Federation to trade with the people of the Iron Hammer Federation to earn the difference in price." When Lin Yuan heard Lu Jie talk about exploring the environment, he came to Lu Jie's side. He sat cross-legged like Lu Jie, listening to Lu Jie's explanation while looking at the map in his hand. Lu Jie wasn't a professional mapmaker. However, Lu Jie, who had gone on many missions in the wild in his early years, had no problem drawing a simple geographical environment. Lu Jie had also specially marked some noteworthy places within a 50-kilometer radius. He had been thinking about how long it would take for him to see human habitation after he arrived in the Divine Wood Federation. However, he did not expect that not only was there a town of the Divine Wood Federation 50 kilometers to the east, but there was also a market organized by the Deep Lush Federation's caravan 95 kilometers to the north. He was still wondering why he had not encountered any powerful fays in this deep mountain forest. While Lin Yuan was controlling the source sand to transform the land within a 2-kilometer radius, he discovered that the strongest fey was just a silver centipede hidden under the soil. Now the case was finally solved. Looking at the map drawn by Wuxia, the location of his underground palace happened to be on the shortest route from the eastern town to the northern border. If the Deep Lush Federation's caravans wanted to make a profit, they would have to travel between the northern border and the eastern town. They used the Iron Hammer Federation's resources to trade with the natives of the Divine Wood Federation, or used the Divine Wood Federation's resources to trade with the Iron Hammer Federation's traders who traveled to and from the border. After all, given the tense relationship between the Iron Hammer Federation and the Divine Wood Federation, the merchants of the Iron Hammer Federation did not have the guts to directly trade in the towns of the Divine Wood Federation. If the two sides wanted to exchange goods, they would have to pass through the Deep Vendor Federation's caravans. It seemed that this forest had already been swept through countless times by the city's 50 kilometers to the east and the caravan's 95 kilometers to the north. Lin Yuan's top priority now was to see if he could get some spatial spiritual materials. According to the environment that Wuxia had scouted, he now had two choices. The first choice was to go to a town in the Divine Wood Federation 50 kilometers to the east to inquire. The other option was to take advantage of the ongoing gathering and ask the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan. Both he and Wuxia had black hair and black eyes, so it was not convenient for them to walk in the towns of the Divine Wood Federation. Hence, it was more reliable to head to the Deep Lush Federation's merchant caravans to gather information. Lin Yuan asked excitedly, "Brother Lu, is the scale of the trade caravan gathering 95 li to the north big?" Wuxia shook his head. "I can't tell how many people are in those tents with my hurricane owlet moth. However, there are only 200 to 300 stalls outside the tents. The scale is about the same as the small supply stations in the Class 2-dimensional rifts that are controlled by our Radiance Federation." Lin Yuan was immediately a little disappointed. The Radiance Federation had ostrich logistics and the Star Web, and basic resources could be easily purchased on the Star Web. Therefore, it was very difficult to operate physical stores or stalls in the Radiance Federation. It was just like Lin Yuan's Fey store, which could only provide food and clothing. Lin Yuan still had to rely on his old neighbors Auntie Zhang and Uncle Li to take care of him. However, the Divine Wood Federation was different. Even if the Divine Wood Federation had a faction like Ostrich Logistics that could deliver goods in the Federation within 3 hours, without the Star Web, it was impossible to replicate the Radiance Federation's trade model. Moreover, the Divine Wood Federation might not necessarily have a faction like Ostrich Logistics. The Divine Wood Federation and even the entire Agon continent basically adopted the trade model of setting up stalls for bartering or auctioning by large chambers of commerce. In this trade context, a small gathering of 200 to 300 stalls was really nothing. Lin Yuan felt that there should be no hope for him to trade for spatial spiritual materials from this small gathering. However, Lin Yuan was not depressed. At the very least, he could come into contact with the Agon continent's natives as soon as possible and gather all kinds of information about the continent from them. In addition, the Deep Lush Federation's merchant caravans traveled all over the world, and this inconspicuous small caravan might know some channels. It could solve the problem of his lack of spatial spiritual materials. He would no longer have to worry about traveling between the Radiance Federation and the Divine Wood Federation. Just as Lin Yuan was about to suggest to Wuxia that they go to the gathering 95 kilometers north to inquire about information and trade some resources, Wuxia suddenly had a surprised expression on his face. The hurricane owlet moth found 5 figures when it was patrolling in the east. These 5 people are covered with half-body rattan armor woven from plant vines. It looks like they should be adventurers from the Divine Wood Federation. However, these 5 people shouldn't be adventurers from the town 65 kilometers away. Upon hearing Wuxia's words, Lin Yuan felt a little strange and did not know what Wuxia's judgment was based on. The adventurers from the Divine Wood Federation town 65 kilometers to the east were fully capable of traveling 40 kilometers. They were hunting fays or gathering spiritual materials 40 kilometers away. Upon seeing the puzzled expression on Lin Yuan's face, Wuxia explained, "A small pond can't raise a big fish. The rattan armor worn by the guards in that town isn't as advanced as the rattan armor worn by these 5 adventurers. This doesn't make sense." End of this chapter. Chapter 1163. Wuxia pondered for a moment before continuing. I'll let the hurricane owlet moths keep an eye on these 5 people and find out their purpose. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded and continued to look at Lu Jie's hand-drawn map. He did not mention the proposal to go to the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravan gathering to inquire about information. Instead, he was going to wait for Lu Jie to find out the purpose of these 5 adventurers. After less than 10 minutes, Lu Jie said with a serious expression, "Lin Yuan, there's really something wrong with these 5 people. Lin Yuan, there's really something wrong with these 5 people. They don't care about the spiritual materials on the ground at all and only care about hurrying on their way. They also observe their surroundings very carefully. This means that these 5 people don't know their surroundings well. If I'm not wrong, these 5 people should be exploring the way." Exploring the way? If they were exploring the way, there must be more people behind. If a team could send 5 people to explore the way, it meant that this team must not be small. Lin Yuan did not expect to encounter such a situation as soon as he arrived in the Divine Wood Federation. Big Brother Lu, let a hurricane owlet moth keep an eye on them. The remaining hurricane owlet moths will expand the search area. If these people are exploring the way, the main force shouldn't be too far away. If there's really a main force behind, then we'll capture these 5 people to get information about the main force. Only the person with the highest status in the main force can bring us more useful information. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Lu Jie immediately took action. While Lu Jie was acting, Lin Yuan did not stay idle. He also let the source sand under his feet split into thumb-sized sand flows that spread in all directions. The more yellow sand he created, the stronger the source sand would be. It was not bad for Lin Yuan to create more sand now. After half an hour, Lu Jie's eyes lit up. 140 kilometers to the east, there are about 300 adventurers. These adventurers are wearing rattan armor, which is almost the same as the 5 adventurers who explored the way. It seems that the rattan armor they're wearing is a kind of standard equipment. There's a huge elephant beast in the other team of 300 adventurers. I don't know who it's carrying. The Divine Wood Federation's adventurers are very respectful to this person. I think this person has an extraordinary identity. Moreover, the 5 adventurers we just discovered are also rushing in our direction. It doesn't seem like the 5 of them intend to stop at a town 65 kilometers away. I'll bring them over now. Upon hearing Lu Jie's information, Lin Yuan thought to himself, this team should not be very strong. Otherwise, they would have discovered the hurricane owlet moths produced by Lu Jie's insect queen. At the thought of this, Lin Yuan was slightly startled and then smiled in relief. He had seen many king and emperor level powerhouses, so he had subconsciously gotten used to looking at things from a higher perspective. This godforsaken place wasn't even the Divine Wood Federation's big cities. How could there be any powerful spirit chi professionals? Soon, the hurricane owlet moth used the wind element to condense a chain and brought the 5 spies, who were wearing rattan armor and had been scared silly, to within 1 kilometer of them. Then Hurricane Knight left the 5 scouts behind and flew away. One of the scouts with a scar on his face wiped the saliva on his forehead from being lifted upside down. With a lingering fear, he stood up and cursed. Fuck. How strange. How can such a small place have such a powerful insect species flying fey? I don't know where we've been brought to and if we will delay Miss Luoya's mission. While the man with a scar on his face was complaining angrily, the other scout, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, also came back to his senses. We've been flying in the air for at least 20 minutes. When we were flying, I saw double images of the surrounding scenery. If that dog bug had flown in a straight line, we would have been pulled out at least 50 kilometers away. After saying that, the man who was as thin as a bamboo pole raised his hand skillfully and gave the other 3 companions, who hadn't come back to their senses, a slap on their necks. In an instant, the 3 companions' necks were red. The skinny man pointed to the youngest and richest fatty among them and said, "Fatty, it's you. You'll make the call to report the situation. Then we'll rush back immediately. I think Miss Luoya will be able to understand if we suddenly encountered a high-grade insect species flying fey and delayed the mission." At the end of his sentence, the skinny man clearly didn't have any confidence. When the fatty who was assigned to make the call heard the skinny man's words, his teeth couldn't help but tremble. "Brother Snake, I will make a call to report the situation. My mouth is so clumsy. What if I say something wrong during the report and make Miss Luoya angry?" The skinny man thought to himself. "You're speaking as if Miss Luoya wouldn't be angry if you weren't stupid with your mouth." Seeing that Fatty didn't want to make the call, the skinny man went up and gave him 2 kicks. Fatty, who had been kicked twice by the skinny man, had no choice but to pick up his phone reluctantly and make a call. After Fatty made the call, the 5 of them, including the skinny man, all had gloomy expressions on their faces. The scarred man couldn't help but ask, "It's over. This time each of us will receive at least 5 vine whips." As he spoke, the scarred man's eyes suddenly lit up. This was because the man with a scar on his face had noticed Lin Yuan and Lu Jie walking toward him. The man with a scar on his face immediately revealed a bloodthirsty smile and said to the skinny man standing beside him, "Brother Snake, our mission this time is to find the Deep Burn Federation's caravan on the border. Look at those 2 people. They might be members of the Deep Burn Federation's caravan." Before the scarred man spoke, the skinny man, Brother Snake, had already stared at Lin Yuan and Lu Jie. "If we capture these 2 people back, not only will we not be punished, but we might even be rewarded. These 2 people look good. If we bring them back, Miss Luoya will definitely have a good time." After saying that, the skinny man summoned a 5-meter-long snake-shaped fey and attacked Lin Yuan and Lu Jie. When the skinny man summoned the snake-shaped fey, Lin Yuan had already used Morbius True Data to investigate it. It was a bronze 9/normal chain snake. Its ability was Binding Lock, which could bind and control the target. Its exclusive skill was Body Extension. When binding the target, it could extend the cartilage in the body and make the body longer. It could lock multiple targets at the same time. When Lu Jie saw the fey attacking Lin Yuan, he immediately prepared to counterattack. Just as Lu Jie was about to circulate his spiritual energy and summon the punching machine, Lin Yuan winked at Lu Jie meaningfully. Upon seeing this, Lu Jie did not summon the insect queen. At that moment, the chain snake was already close, and it impolitely used entanglement on Lin Yuan and Lu Jie. Chapter 1164. The chain snake stretched its body and tied Lin Yuan's and Lu Jie's arms and legs together. The skinny man, Big Brother Snake, also walked up with the other 4 scouts. Big Brother Snake bent down and carefully sized up Lin Yuan and Lu Jie. "So handsome. With your looks, you should be qualified to serve Miss Luoya. You've become Miss Luoya's dinner plate." Upon hearing this skinny man's words, many small question marks appeared in Lin Yuan's head. He could understand serving that person named Luoya. But what did it mean to be a dinner plate? It couldn't be what I thought it meant, right? After checking Lin Yuan's and Lu Jie's appearances like goods, the skinny man patted the man with a scar on his face beside him and said, "Old Six, interrogate the 2 of them before taking them back. Old Six, interrogate the 2 of them before you bring them back. Find out who they are. If we get something out, we can go back and provide the information. We might even get more rewards. Miss Luoya is quite generous when rewarding people." The man with a scar on his face, Old Lu, immediately summoned a plant fey with clamp-like leaves. He said to Lu Jie and Lin Yuan with a sinister expression, "I'll ask you questions. I'll ask you a question. If you answer too slowly, you'll be pinched by my steel clip once. You're all Miss Luoya's toys. I'll pay attention to the strength and not break your legs. But I don't know if you can clamp your bones out of cracks. Anyway, Miss Luoya wants your faces, not your legs." As Old Six spoke, he even made his steel clip flower clamp its leaves twice, looking quite intimidating. Lin Yuan looked at the steel clip flower in front of him and was too lazy to use True Data to check its attributes. This steel clamp flower looked like an extremely mediocre bronze fey. Lin Yuan did not directly make a move on this group of people, mainly wanting to take this opportunity to see the Divine Wood Federation's natives' attitude toward the Deep Brahmin Federation's people. He and Lu Jie did not do anything or say anything. As soon as they met, they were captured by the 5 adventurers in front of them. Lin Yuan could not help but be surprised. The Divine Wood Federation's natives' attitude toward the Deep Brahmin Federation's people shouldn't be so bad, right? It seemed that he and Lu Jie had been captured and made into slaves. After all, if the natives of the Divine Wood Federation wanted to obtain minerals, metals, and even large amounts of animal fur, they would need to trade with the caravans of the Deep Brahmin Federation. When Old Six saw that Lin Yuan and Lu Jie did not say anything, he thought that they were frightened by him. Old Six wanted to ask a question first. If the 2 of them didn't say anything after he asked the questions, he would teach them a lesson first. After being taught a lesson, the 2 of them would probably fight to spit out everything they knew. "When will your caravan return?" When Lin Yuan heard the scarred man's question, he immediately knew what was going on. It seemed like this group of people were heading for the Deep Vendor Federation's Chamber of Commerce 95 kilometers north. He didn't know that these people's goal was to rob the caravan's supplies. Or did he want to silence the Deep Lush Federation's caravan and frame the Iron Hammer Federation? In any case, he knew that he was destined to be unable to find out from these people the attitude of the Divine Wood Federation's natives toward the people of the Deep Lush Federation. In that case, There was no need for him to continue playing with these people. After waiting for 5 seconds and seeing that neither Lu Jie nor Lin Yuan had answered his question, Old Sixth said, "That's right." He ordered clip flower with a ferocious expression. Steel clamp flower, first use the clamp force of 25 gene to teach these two things a lesson. I think these two people. Before Old Six could finish, he was interrupted by Fatty, who was frowning. Brother Snake, look at the two of them. They didn't even frown when we caught them. Isn't there something wrong? Fatty's words reminded the skinny man, Brother Snake. As the leader of the scouting team, the skinny man, Big Brother Snake, had encountered plenty of Fays during missions. High-grade Fays would either attack and kill humans or hide far away. There was no such thing as an inexplicable release after capturing someone. Furthermore, that moth Fay that had captured them did not feed on flesh and blood, so there was no need for it to capture them. After they were captured, the two men from the Deep Lush Federation quickly appeared. This was too much of a coincidence. With that in mind, the skinny man immediately ordered his Fay, the chain snake, to crush Lu Jie and Lin Yuan's bodies. At that moment, the skinny man suddenly realized that he had lost control of his chain snake. It was unknown when two sand pillars had appeared under the feet of the two men from the Deep Lush Federation. The two sand pillars tightly bound the chain snake. After Lin Yuan pulled Lu Jie to stand up, he looked at the 5 people in front of him and raised his brows. You wanted to ask us questions just now. Now that time has changed, it's my turn to ask you questions. While the 5 spies were still in shock, Lin Yuan stomped on the ground and shouted, "Just now you wanted to ask us questions. Boil source sand." Immediately after, a quicksand vortex with a diameter of half a meter appeared under each of the 5 spies' feet. The 5 spies struggled in the quicksand vortex, and each of them was tightly bound by 2 thumb-sized sand flows. The sand flows separated into several even finer quicksand that drilled into the 5 spies' rattan armor. After searching the 5 spies' bodies from inside out, they only found 5 mobile phones. The sand flow wrapped around the phones and handed them to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan chose 2 of the better-looking phones and threw one to Lu Jie, while he held the other in his hand. The other 3 phones were crushed by the sand flow. Lu Jie also waved his hand, and the hurricane owlet moth, which had just brought the 5 of them here, stopped in his palm. Upon seeing this, the 5 spies' teeth trembled violently. That moth-type Fey that had brought them here had indeed not appeared by chance. Thinking of what they had just said, the 5 of them had bitter expressions on their faces. The 5 of them understood that they were completely finished this time. Lin Yuan looked at the 5 people with ashen faces and said, "I'll ask each of you one question. I will ask each of you one question. If you answer me well, I will give the 5 of you a chance to live. The sand stream that binds you is much stronger than that bronze chain snake." Lin Yuan first walked in front of the 5 people who were trembling the most and asked, "Why are you looking for the Deep Lush Federation's caravan? Why are you looking for the Deep Lush Federation's caravan?" When the person who was trembling the most heard Lin Yuan's question, he subconsciously looked at the other 4. He was obviously concerned about the other 4 and did not dare to answer Lin Yuan's question. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan immediately commanded the source sand to separate out the platinum red lotus soft gold that metal consume manifestation had devoured. When the red lotus soft gold touched the body, it would cause severe pain from multiple levels. Even Muscle Man would cry if he touched it. Hundreds of red lotus soft gold silk threads separated from the 2 sand flows, wrapping the man Lin Yuan was questioning into a cocoon. ABC. Chapter 1165. A heart-wrenching cry echoed from the cocoon for close to 10 seconds. Lin Yuan allowed the source sand to absorb the red lotus soft gold and released the man that was wrapped in the red lotus soft gold. After being released by Lin Yuan, the man's face was covered in tears as though he had just been ravaged by something indescribable. Before Lin Yuan could ask again, the man trembled and said, "We are from the Dry Cliff Bandits. We're from the Withered Cliff Bandits. Our goal is to steal all of the Deep Creek Caravan's resources. We want to kill all the Deep Refine Caravan's members and frame the Iron Hammer Federation. This is so that the other caravans in the Deep Refine Federation will be afraid to hold a gathering in the Iron Hammer Federation's territory. Miss Luoya is a noble daughter of a 2-star family and a Class 1 creation master. She is also the vice leader of our Dry Cliff Bandit King group. Boss, I'm begging you. I'll tell you everything I know. Don't kill me. Leave me here. I'll do anything you want. I can make a dinner plate for you." Lin Yuan grinned. Don't make a dinner plate. How can I eat if you make a dinner plate for me?" Suppressing the disgust in his heart, Lin Yuan looked playfully at the other 4 Dry Cliff Bandit King group members who were waiting for his questions. He noticed that the 4 Dry Cliff Bandit King group members' faces were pale. It was obvious that he was frightened by the crying of the man he was talking to. Lin Yuan originally thought that he would need to use some tricks if he wanted to get some actual information. He didn't expect that as soon as he used his tricks, the other party would clean up. There was nothing else he wanted to know. Based on the information he had obtained, Lin Yuan immediately thought of a way to get close to the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravans that were 95 kilometers away and gain their trust. Lin Yuan knew that the 5 people in front of him were cowards. He couldn't easily return between the Divine Wood Federation and the Radiance Federation. The 5 of them might not be spirit craftsmen, but they could speed up the underground palace's construction by doing some manual labor under Hu Quan. Without their cell phones, it meant that they had no way to communicate with the outside world. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't need to hide anything from them. After a round of threats and no sweet dates, the 5 of them were sent underground by Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was not afraid that the 5 of them would not work if he did not give them some benefits. Hu Quan did not even need to do anything. In order to curry favor with him, Feng Shuang, Old He, and Hu Tian would fight to arrange things clearly for the 5 of them. After arranging the 5 free laborers, Lin Yuan looked at Lu Jie and said, "Brother Lu, I'll have to trouble you to accompany me to put on a show." Lin Yuan explained his plan to Lu Jie in detail. Upon hearing that, Lu Jie took out 2 sets of clothes from the diamond face storage box. "If we're going to put on a show, we'll have to go all the way. Only then will it look realistic." When Lu Jie handed him the clothes, Lin Yuan gave him a thumbs up. "Sure, Brother Lu. Professional." The clothes that Lu Jie gave Lin Yuan looked very luxurious but were very tacky in Lin Yuan's eyes. Under normal circumstances, spirit chi professionals with true wealth and taste would wear spirit chi clothes that were relatively simple in design. The preciousness was mostly reflected in the materials used or the details of the engravings. The spirit chi clothing in Lin Yuan's hand was embroidered with a few very obvious colored gems. These gems were not expensive and could be found in Class 1 and Class 2 underground dimensional rifts. This kind of item produced from the underground dimensional rift could be used in any continent. Thus, even if he met someone with ulterior motives, he wouldn't be suspected. Lin Yuan put on the clothes in a few moments and said, "That's right. Brother Lu, come and help me make a few more cuts on this shirt, so that I can look a little more pathetic." Upon hearing that, Lu Jie reached out and scratched his head. He was very resistant to making a move on Lin Yuan, even if Lin Yuan had taken the initiative to do so. In the end, Lu Jie summoned the insect queen and had it produce a normal flesh-mincing blade insect. He then ordered the flesh-mincing blade insect to gently make nearly 20 cuts of different sizes on Lin Yuan's clothes. The hurricane owlet moth raised a few more gusts of wind, messing up Lin Yuan's hair and clothes. After a series of actions, Lu Jie said with some hesitation, "Done. But Lin Yuan, I keep feeling that something is wrong. This shirt looks extravagant and old-fashioned. People with real foundations won't take a fancy to it, but people without foundations will especially pursue it. There's no problem with the choice of clothes. It looks pathetic after it's torn. When you wear it, your temperament will support this shirt, and the old-fashioned feeling of this shirt will disappear. You don't look like a young master of a small family clan who has been attacked and is fleeing." The more Lu Jie looked at Lin Yuan, the more he felt that Lin Yuan's temperament was top-notch. What Lu Jie was most worried about now was that Lin Yuan would wear this shirt with more than 20 cuts to find Luoya and let her know the location of the Deep Brahmin Federation. What if Luoya could not resist the temptation and did Lin Yuan first regardless of anything? Although Lu Jie had never been to the Divine Wood Federation, he had read a lot of information about it. The Divine Wood Federation's openness was unimaginable to the Radiance Federation's unmarried girls. Even the ravenous old aunties in their 40s and 50s had to admit defeat. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan reached out and grabbed a handful of soil from the ground and wiped it twice on his face. Then he rubbed his muddy palms on his body. After Lin Yuan saw his appearance through the Source Sand's chain sword, he said with a bright smile, "Doesn't it look much better this time?" Lu Jie originally wanted to tell Lin Yuan, "Even if you smeared dirt on your body and face, the black soil would only make one's skin appear whiter, but it wouldn't lower one's temperament." Lu Jie was about to speak when he realized that Lin Yuan's temperament had suddenly changed. Not only did his aura weaken, but the expression on his face also looked so weak and helpless. There was also a trace of innocence and a sense of awkwardness. Lin Yuan's aura was in place, but the current Lin Yuan was many times more attractive than before. When Lu Jie saw Lin Yuan's appearance, he could not help but walk forward and grab a few more handfuls of soil, rubbing large pieces of soil on Lin Yuan's clothes and pants. After dirtying Lin Yuan's clothes, Lu Jie still did not stop. He then patted some muddy black soil on Lin Yuan's face and neck before stopping. Finally, Lu Jie let the insect queen self-destruct the newly hatched flesh-mincing blade insects, and the insect fluid splashed all over Lin Yuan. It stained Lin Yuan's body with the fishy smell of the insect's internal organs. Lu Jie thought to himself, Luoya, who always treats people like a plate, shouldn't attack Lin Yuan as soon as they meet. Lin Yuan let Lu Jie transform him. End of this chapter. Chapter 1166. Lin Yuan said after Lu Jie was done with the modification. Brother Lu, have the hurricane owlet moths keep an eye on the withered cliff bandits. The dry cliff bandits are getting tired of waiting for those 5 fellows to return. I'll make my move after the main force has advanced. Then wait for me near the Deep Revel Caravan's market. Since the withered cliff bandits are heading straight for the border, the Deep Revel Caravan must be absolutely confident. When the two sides start fighting and the Deep Vendor Federation's caravans are mostly dead and unable to resist, you can come and take care of the situation. Lu Jie said. According to your plan, I will deliberately let go of Luoya from the 2-star family of the Dry Cliff Bandits, and use the insect swarm to drive Roha towards the underground palace. While speaking, Lu Jie could not help but sigh inwardly at Lin Yuan's plan. Both he and Lin Yuan were powerful, so it would be easy for them to stir up trouble in this world. But since they had just arrived, only a reckless person would act rashly without understanding the situation. He currently needed to obtain spatial spiritual materials on the Agro-Pattern Road. If they acted rashly based on their strength, it was very likely that they would become the common enemy of the Divine Wood Iron Hammer and the Deep Lush Federation. In this way, it would be very difficult for Sky City to develop in the Agon continent. It was said that the 3 major federations didn't have any Class 5 creation masters, but this was just what the 3 major federations claimed. If the 3 major federations wanted to hide the information, even if they had Class 5 creation masters, outsiders would not be able to find out. Therefore, no matter what, he had to build a network of connections in the Ahiwan continent according to plan. Only with strength and connections would one be able to pursue the greatest development in the Awen continent. According to Lin Yuan's plan, he would be the savior of the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan 95 kilometers north. It would be easy to dig out information from this small caravan of the Deep Burn Federation. Moreover, he was likely to come into contact with larger caravans through this small caravan. At that time, his rewards would be far more than just being the savior of this small caravan. As for letting Luoya go without killing Luoya, he could also get a wave of information from Luoya. With intelligence from both sides, the situation within a 500-kilometer radius would be easily grasped. It would also be easier for him to formulate his next plan. While Lu Jie was monitoring the Dry Cliff Bandits through the Hurricane Owlet moths, he had plenty of free time. Lin Yuan felt that he might be good at acting, but if he appeared in front of the Dry Cliff Bandits in ragged clothes, he would definitely arouse suspicion. There were very few powerful fays in this forest, and it wouldn't be easy for him to end up in such a sorry state. This dimensional rift was the best reason. The existence of the dimensional rift also made the Dry Cliff Bandits wary, so they would choose to take a detour when passing through the underground palace. He took out the void-shattering stones that he had harvested in the Miao family's beast creation garden and accurately took out 5 caddies of void-shattering stones from the 15 caddies. Then he injected his spiritual power into the 5-kilogram void-shattering stone. The space-shattering stone, which had been infused with spiritual power, immediately lit up with a silver light, and the originally stable spatial energy inside it also became violent. The spatial energy fluctuations emitted by the space-shattering stone caused the space on the scene to become mottled. It was as if it would shatter at any moment. Lin Yuan quietly watched the process of the intact space slowly collapsing and finally cracking open the dimensional rift. Suddenly, a trace of wonderful enlightenment appeared in his heart. However, this enlightenment was fleeting, and Lin Yuan wasn't able to firmly grasp it. Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Lin Yuan thought to himself, if I can grasp this trace of enlightenment, will I be able to comprehend a willpower rune suitable for fusing with a spatial type Fey? Lin Yuan had used the space-shattering stone to open the spatial rift on the ground, and it was currently daytime. Even if the Class 1 dimensional rift emitted a dark red glow and was accompanied by intense spatial fluctuations, it would still be difficult for spirit chi professionals to sense it from 10 kilometers away. It would also be difficult for spirit chi professionals to sense it from 10 kilometers away. Therefore, Lin Yuan wasn't afraid that the Dry Cliff Bandits and the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravans would sense it. Of course, after completing this plan, this Class 1-dimensional rift would still need to be reinforced and shielded with spatial spiritual materials. However, Lin Yuan didn't need to worry about reinforcing and controlling the dimensional rift. He could just leave it to the Class 5 spirit craftsman Hu Quan. At that moment, dimensional life forms were already surging out of the dimensional rift. Lin Yuan saw that the dimensional rift that had just opened spat out 30 alien insects at once as though it was vomiting. Among these 30 alien insects, 12 of them didn't have a grade. 8 of them were normal and 9 of them were elite. There was only one alien insect that reached bronze, which was also Class 1. Subsequently, the dimensional rift continuously vomited out alien insects, but none of them reached Class 1. The alien insect dimensional rift could be said to be Lin Yuan's old friend. The first 2-dimensional rifts that Lin Yuan had come into contact with were alien insect dimensional rifts. Lin Yuan had opened this dimensional rift not only to find a reasonable reason for appearing in front of the Dry Cliff Bandits, but also to nurture Silver Brilliance. Among all the dimensional rifts, the one that was most beneficial for nurturing Silver Brilliance in the early stages was undoubtedly the alien insect dimensional rift. The appearance of a dimensional rift required a process to brew an alien beast tide. The alien insects that had just been spat out of the dimensional rift would not act rashly immediately after arriving in the main world from the dimensional world. Instead, they would wait for more of their kind to arrive before forming a group and moving together with the high-grade alien insects. It was the same situation that Lin Yuan had encountered in Millstone Town. But now, Lin Yuan was close to the dimensional rift. Upon seeing Lin Yuan, these alien insects that should have been waiting for their companions, regardless of their strength, pounced at him. Lin Yuan waved his hand and summoned Silver Brilliance, who had been concentrating on absorbing the insect-patterned coral jade in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Silver Brilliance had been in the Spirit Lock spatial zone ever since she had transformed into a fairy source-type life form. She had never had the chance to be summoned to the outside world. Now that Lin Yuan had summoned her, Silver Brilliance immediately flapped the 3 pairs of wings on her back. She curiously sized up the surroundings. Originally, Silver Flower liked to stick to Lin Yuan, so every time he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Silver Brilliance would always land on Lin Yuan's ears with chimey. After Red Thorn completed its transformation, Silver Brilliance felt its possessiveness toward Lin Yuan. In order to maintain the sisterhood between Red Thorn and Lin Yuan, Silver Brilliance would not continue to stay by his side when Red Thorn stayed by his side. Of course, this was also related to Red Thorn's bloodline subtly suppressing Silver Brilliance. Silver Brilliance's fairy bloodline was at the low grade of 3 wings and had not reached the mid-grade. However, Red Thorn's fairy bloodline had reached the peak of 3 wings. The bloodline caused Silver Brilliance to subconsciously respect Red Thorn. ABC. Chapter 1167. Now that he was summoned, Red Thorn was not by his side. Silver Flower flew to Lin Yuan's face and kissed the part where Lin Yuan's skin color could still be seen. She did not mind that Lin Yuan's face was dirted by the mud. Lin Yuan looked at Silver Flower's excited expression and said with a smile, "Silver Flower did not have the chance to nurture you previously. Previously, Silver Glory didn't have the chance to nurture you. Now that you have this Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift, you can nurture the bone lotus flowers as you wish. Use the bone lotuses to devour the alien insects that emerge from the Class 1 dimensional rift and rely on the alien insects' souls to increase your strength." Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said, "Silver Flower, try to increase your quality while increasing your strength. Inhua, try to improve your quality as much as possible while you're improving your strength. Put your level aside for now. A Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift will at most produce Class 3 alien insects. If your bone lotuses can't deal with Class 3 alien insects, Big Brother Lu's Insect Queen will help you. Therefore, you don't have to rush to increase your rank. Increasing your quality to legend is more important." Lin Yuan summoned his first willpower rune, the Massacre Willpower Rune, and said to Silver Flower, "Silver Flower, I will keep this willpower rune for you. Silver Flower, I will keep this willpower rune for you. I'll use this willpower rune to let you evolve into a fantasy breed when you advance to legend by devouring souls." Silver Flower blushed and kissed Lin Yuan's face a few more times. Silver Flower's former self was the Carcinoma Fey, the sea burial lotus flower. Silver Flower had transformed into a fairy source-type life form because the demon's heart soul had devoured the sea burial lotus flower's soul. However, the demon's heart's soul had perfectly inherited the sea burial lotus flower's chaotic consciousness. To the former tumor Fei, the sea burial lotus flower, Lin Yuan was a good person. Even though Lin Yuan had captured it, he had also provided it with the environment that it had always dreamed of. It allowed it to rapidly increase its strength. As the original soul of the demon's heart that had devoured the sea burial lotus flower's soul, Lin Yuan was its second parent. Therefore, Yin Hua was 100% reliant on Lin Yuan in her bones. Silver Flower had never thought that Lin Yuan would do anything for it. To Yin Hua, being able to follow Lin Yuan was already the happiest thing in the world. Every time a fairy source-type life form evolved to a higher level, its bloodline would be activated. When a fairy source-type life form advanced to a fantasy breed, it was also a chance for its bloodline to transform while increasing its strength. It was true that Yin Hua was very lenient toward Red Thorn, but Red Thorn's appearance had also stimulated Yin Hua's competitive spirit. Yin Hua had always been looking forward to advancing to a fantasy breed and obtaining the opportunity to transform her bloodline. He saw many alien insects being pushed away by the source sand when they were pouncing at him, causing them to escape into the forest. Lin Yuan urged Yin Hua. "Let's begin. If you don't, your rations will run away. If your rations run away, who knows how long you'll have to wait to raise your grade to legendary." Lin Yuan didn't care about the alien insects that escaped. If these insects could escape more than 5 kilometers away, they would be able to escape when he lured the Dry Cliff Bandit King group to the Deep Burn Federation's merchant guild. Upon seeing these scattered alien insects, there was no need to wait until they were within the range of the dimensional rift. The withered Cliff Bandit King would believe his words. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's urging, Yin Hua immediately flapped her wings and flew to the top of the dimensional rift. Immediately after, the magnificent coral crown on Yin Hua's head, which was twice the size of her body, suddenly emitted a rainbow-colored radiance. A large number of rainbow-colored lotus flowers appeared under Yin Hua's feet. After these rainbow-colored lotus flowers appeared, they turned into rainbow-colored spots of light that sprinkled onto the ground. As a result, when these rainbow-colored spots of light touched the ground, bone lotus flowers instantly bloomed one after another. The smaller bone lotus flowers were the size of a bowl, while the larger ones were the size of a wash basin. Upon seeing the densely packed insect patterns on the bone lotus flowers, Lin Yuan knew that Yin Hua had already started to execute the coral insect pattern's rune nurturing mode. The rune nurturing mode could increase the bone lotus flowers' hardness and ductility. It would help the bone lotus flowers to feed on the alien insects that were spat out by the dimensional rift and consume their souls. Yin Hua's speed of nurturing the bone lotus flowers was not as fast as Red Thorn. However, Silver Eye/normal Yin Hua was able to nurture nearly 200 square meters of bone lotus flowers after exhausting all of her spiritual power. The 200 square meters of bone lotus flowers was just enough to barely surround the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift. No matter which direction the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift spat out the alien insects, they would immediately come into contact with the bone lotus flowers. The elite alien insects would still be able to struggle for a moment under the bone lotus flowers after being consumed by the bone lotus flowers. As for the normal alien insects that didn't have a grade, their souls would instantly be drained by the revolving bone lotus flowers and turned into insect juice. As the bone lotus flower's sea of flowers consumed a large number of alien insects, it absorbed a large number of alien insect souls. Yin Hua's depleted spiritual power was also constantly being replenished. When Yin Hua's spiritual power was replenished, she slowly expanded the bone lotus flower sea of flowers. After expanding the bone lotus flowers to the size of a football field, Yin Hua stopped expanding the bone lotus flower sea of flowers. This was because the digestion speed of the bone lotus flower sea of flowers was already barely able to keep up with the speed of the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift spitting out alien insects. The bone lotus flower sea of flowers only consumed the alien insect souls, and the alien insect corpses were piled up. In just a short moment there was a tall pile of insects. Seeing this, Yin Hua changed the pattern nurturing mode to burial pattern mode. Since there was no longer a need to expand the bone lotus flower sea of flowers, the pattern nurturing mode lost its original purpose. Under the burial pattern mode, the wandering insect patterns on the bone lotus flowers began to consume the bone lotus flowers. The insect patterns that consumed the bone lotus flowers transformed into bone worms. According to the different insect patterns on the coral jade that Yin Hua absorbed, the bone worms formed were also different. The bone worms mainly consumed the vitality of the living to increase their strength. The flesh of dimensional life forms contained a large amount of vitality. Under the burial pattern mode, these bone worms became the cleaners of the Sea of Flowers. They helped Yin Hua clean up the insect corpses that were left behind after the bone lotus flowers consumed their souls. The entire Sea of Flowers formed by the bone lotus flowers was divided into many parts. Every part of it was carrying out its own duties, coordinating with Silver Splendor in an orderly manner to maximize its feeding. At this moment, Lin Yuan sharply noticed something. The sky above the bone lotus flower Sea of Flowers was already covered with a thin layer of white powder. Lin Yuan immediately knew that this was Yin Hua's elite ability, Bone Dense Mist. After the bone worms consumed the insect corpses, they would turn the undigested insect carapace into powder and spit it out. The Bone Dense Mist was an excellent shielding ability, and at the same time, it had the effect of expanding the attack range. 166 Reading Network. Chapter 1168. The bone powder could host coral patterns. The coral patterns in the bone powder could instantly transform into bone insects through the burial pattern mode and attack targets in the air. Therefore, the bone lotus sea's attack range was not limited to the land. As long as the bone powder mist enveloped the area, it would be within Silver Splendor's attack range. As for the exclusive skill Hermit Dead Servant, there was no rush. Dimensional life forms like alien insects had weak souls. Furthermore, the alien insects that descended from the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift were weak. If he wanted to rely on such weak souls to nurture the first Hermit Undead Servant, he estimated that it would take at least a week. The exclusive skill allowed the Hermit Dead Servant to constantly grow stronger by devouring the dead souls that were killed by the Bone Lotus Sea. It was an important method and guarantee for Lin Yuan to create a forbidden land. Lin Yuan was looking forward to nurturing the Hermit Dead Servant in a week. Since the Hermit Dead Servant could not be nurtured in a short time, Lin Yuan decided not to pay attention to the Bone Lotus Sea that Silver Splendor had nurtured. At that moment, a giant alien insect's cry echoed. A giant beetle with black spikes all over its body squeezed out of the dimensional rift and landed in the Sea of Flowers formed by the Bone Lotus flowers. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw this black beetle covered in spikes. Lin Yuan did not even need to use true data to investigate this Class 3 alien insect and recognized its name. Spiky Beetle. Among the 3 Class 3 alien insects that he had encountered in Millstone Town, there was a spiky beetle. However, the spiky beetle in Millstone Town was nearly 3.5 meters long and 3 meters wide. Now this spiky beetle was only 3 meters long and about 2.5 meters wide. It meant that this spiky beetle's strength was far inferior to the one that had appeared in Millstone Town. The dimensional rift that had appeared above Millstone Town was a pinnacle Class 1 dimensional rift. The dimensional rift that he had opened with the spatial shattering rock was only a low-class Class 1 dimensional rift. The alien insects that gushed out of the dimensional rift could not be compared. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to kill the spiky beetle. Instead, he let it struggle and destroy the Bone Lotus Sea. He planned to use this spiky beetle to test the White Bone Lotus Sea's recovery ability. If Lin Yuan wanted to use the White Bone Lotus Sea as the main body to create a forbidden zone, he had to know how powerful the White Bone Lotus Sea's recovery ability was. If one's recovery ability was not strong enough, even if the White Bone Lotus Sea was very strong, it would not be able to withstand it. It was also very easy for people to use their lives to forcefully destroy it. There was no need for him to test the White Bone Lotus Sea's strength now. This was because the White Bone Lotus Sea's strength could not be effectively tested. On the one hand, it was because as the Bone Lotus flower absorbed the souls of more dimensional creatures, Silver Essence's grade and quality would continue to rise. As a result, Huahai's overall strength would naturally increase. On the other hand, the bone worm formed from the insect patterns would constantly increase its strength as it devoured life force. If it had enough life force, it was not impossible for the bone worm's strength to surpass the bone lotus. These tiny bone worms, which were hard to see with the naked eye, had unlimited potential. The level 3 spiky beetle rampaged through the Sea of Flowers, smashing a large number of white bone lotuses into smithereens. Now, Silver Essence's strength was only at bronze eye/normal, and she had not had time to devour many alien insects. Even if Silver Essence was a 6-winged fairy source-type life form with a powerful bloodline, under the suppression of 2 major grades, it was truly difficult for Silver Flower to deal with the Class 3 spiky beetle effectively. Seeing that Lin Yuan had no intention of helping her, Silver Essence blinked at Lin Yuan, feeling wronged. Seeing Silver Essence's wronged eyes, Lin Yuan comforted her. "Be good, Silver Essence. Try to control the situation in the White Bone Lotus Sea first. When you can't control the situation, I'll let the source sand get rid of this spiky beetle. By then you can absorb the spiky beetle's soul. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, Silver Essence immediately understood what he meant. She knew that Lin Yuan wanted to test her strength. Moreover, from Lin Yuan's words, Silver Essence could tell that Lin Yuan was not optimistic that she could defeat this ugly guy in front of her. Lin Yuan's contempt immediately stimulated Silver Essence's desire to win. Among all the Class 3 alien insects, the spiky beetle was an alien insect that excelled in defense. Its attack method completely relied on the explosive power of the physical body, using the spiky beetle armor to charge at the target. Normally, Silver Essence would not dare to go head-on with this spiky beetle. However, the Dimensional Rift's entrance was constantly spewing out a large number of alien insects. The death of these alien insects was providing spiritual power for her abundant sea of flowers to recover. Therefore, Silver Essence intended to give it a try with all her might. Suddenly, Silver Essence's silver eyes lit up, as though she had thought of a good way to win. Silver Essence circulated her spiritual power, and the huge crystal-like coral crown on her head lit up with a colorful luster again. Numerous colorful lotuses also grew wildly under Silver Essence's feet. Yinhua flew down from the sky and landed in the sea of white bone lotuses with the 7 colored lotuses under her feet. Immediately after, all the white bone lotus sea in the stadium became restless. Chapter 1169. When Lin Yuan sensed that Yinhua's spiritual power was rapidly depleting, he sighed. Yinhua's desire to win is so strong. Lin Yuan had originally wanted to test the Sea of Flowers' recovery ability, but Silver Splendor had clashed with the spiky beetle. Although the level 3 spiky beetle's intelligence was not high, it was not a complete fool. After struggling for a while, the spiky beetle found a way to break the stalemate. The spiky beetle turned sideways and tore off the 3 7-colored lotuses that were wrapped around the black thorns. The stem of the rainbow lotus had a very strong elasticity. The force that broke the spiky beetle suddenly loosened. Half of the spiky beetle's body suddenly stood up. At this moment, a large number of bone lotuses grew vigorously from the spiky beetle's body. In the blink of an eye, it had reached a height of 3 to 4 meters. Lin Yuan looked at the changes in the Sea of Flowers through the white bone fog and knew that Silver Flower had switched from burial pattern mode to nurturing pattern mode again. The newborn bone lotus flower underwent a high-intensity hardening under the tattoo nurturing mode. The layers of bone lotuses pushed hard and the spiky beetle was flipped over. The spikes on the beetle's back pierced into the ground, making it difficult for the beetle to turn its body, no matter how hard it tried. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan gave Silver Flower's plan a thumbs up. Seeing that the rune nurturing mode worked, he flipped the spiky beetle's body over. Yinhua then switched from nurturing rune mode to burial rune mode. While continuing to spawn bone lotuses to repair the Sea of Flowers destroyed by the spiky beetles, he also gave orders to the various bone worms in the Sea of Bone Lotuses. The bone worms in the Sea of Flowers immediately rushed to the spiky beetle. Without the bone worm to clean up the alien insect corpses, the insect mountains in the Sea of Flowers piled up again. Lin Yuan watched as the black spiky beetle was instantly covered by tiny white objects and turned pure white. After the bone worms covered the spiky beetle's body, the spiky beetle struggled crazily. As it struggled, it let out painful cries from time to time. The bone worm was small in size, and when the spiky beetle turned its body over, a small gap would appear on its back. The bone worm could drill into the gaps of the spiky beetle's outer armor. As a level 3 alien insect, the spiky beetle's outer armor was hard. The bone worm, which had not consumed much life force, could not chew through the shell of the spiky beetle. Although the spiky beetle also had soft armor inside its carapace, this layer of soft armor could not prevent the bone worms from gnawing. Amidst the sorrowful cries of the spiky beetle, the beetle was chewed into an empty shell by the bone worm at a speed visible to the naked eye. After devouring the beetle's flesh, the bone worm returned to its previous position. The corpses piled up like a mountain in just half a minute. For now, the bone worms could not eat the outer shell of the spiky beetle, so it was dragged to a corner of the Sea of Flowers by the bone lotus. The Sea of Bone Lotuses left an empty space in the corner. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this empty space was like Silver Splendor's small treasure vault. At that moment, Silver Flower flew out of the bone lotus flower Sea of Flowers and flew in front of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, isn't Silver Flower awesome? Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan rubbed Silver Flower's face with the pad of his finger and said, "That's right. Yinhua, you really gave me a pleasant surprise. The battle just now began when Silver Flower spawned a large number of bone lotuses to turn the spiky beetle's body over. Lin Yuan thoroughly witnessed the speed at which Silver Flower spawned bone lotuses to replenish the Sea of Flowers. Lin Yuan also had a good idea of the Sea of Bone Lotus's recovery ability. Silver Flower was still too weak now, and the Sea of Bone Lotuses had just formed. Even the hermit dead servants had not appeared, so how could it be strong? When Silver Flower became a fantasy breed, a few more hermit dead servants would be cultivated in the Sea of Flowers. For the people living here, this forest was enough to be called a forbidden area that could not be set foot in. However, if he wanted this forbidden area to become famous and attract the real experts of the Divine Wood Federation to come and take risks, Lin Yuan needed to think of some other ways. From the moment Lin Yuan summoned Silver Flower, the insect queen had been shivering in Lu Jie's arms. Only its small head was exposed and it timidly looked at Silver Flower. The pressure of the bloodline made the insect queen not dare to be presumptuous, flying in front of Lu Jie as usual. Lu Jie could not help but marvel in his heart while comforting the insect queen. After Lu Jie contracted the insect queen, he could not contract other phase or source-type lifeforms. Later, he contracted the source-type cocoon of evolution because the cocoon of evolution was essentially parasitizing the insect queen. It was equivalent to the insect queen contracting the cocoon of evolution, which had nothing to do with Lu Jie. Therefore, Lu Jie would look up information about fairy source-type lifeforms whenever he had time and had a very good understanding of them. He knew that the fairy source-type lifeform with the highest bloodline was a six-winged fairy that had grown its third pair of wings when it became a myth breed. Lu Jie's insect queen was originally a four-winged fairy. After the insect queen mutated, it already had the capital to become a six-winged fairy. This had been confirmed by his master, Night-Leaning Moon. However, Lu Jie was not sure when the insect queen would transform into a six-winged fairy. Lu Jie had always thought that his insect queen would be the first to break the fairy source-type lifeform record. But now Lin Yuan had casually summoned a six-winged fairy. Moreover, this six-winged fairy's grade was shocking as it was only at bronze. Lu Jie felt that this world was simply too mysterious. Silver Flower was a miracle that broke history and common sense. This miracle was created by Lin Yuan. Lu Jie often browsed forums and posts related to fairies. There were all sorts of discussions about fairy source-type lifeforms in the threads and forums, and many of them were completely irrelevant. However, Lu Jie felt that if he posted what he saw on the forum or in the forum, he would be able to get a lot of attention. It was very likely that he would be treated as a mental patient by the netizens and scolded into a sieve. Lin Yuan looked at Yin Hua, who was blushing suspiciously after being praised by him. Yin Hua, with your current strength, can you withstand another dimensional rift? Hearing this, Yin Hua hurriedly shook her head and said, Lin Yuan, I've already reached my limit by spawning such a sea of flowers. If I expand it further, my control over the sea of flowers at the edge will weaken. The sea of flowers can't be nurtured just because you have spiritual energy. The bone worm consumes the flesh mountain, and the bone lotus consumes the soul. Although it's an instinctive reaction, I still need to command and deploy them. Given my current strength, opening another dimensional rift is simply too difficult. When my strength increases to bronze V/flawless, the sea of flowers will be twice as large as it is now. At that time I'll be able to handle another dimensional rift. Upon hearing this, Lin Yuan dispelled the idea of using 5 kilograms of void-shattering rocks to open another dimensional rift. End of this chapter. Chapter 1170. It wasn't a good thing to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. While Silver Flower was playing with Lin Yuan, she saw the insect queen in Lu Jie's embrace. Silver Flower flapped her 3 pairs of wings and flew toward the insect queen. Silver Flower took the initiative to befriend the insect queen, and they quickly became friends. Silver Flower invited the insect queen to play in the sea of white bone lotus flowers. Seeing that his insect queen and Silver Flower were getting along well, Lu Jie revealed a smile. I have such a good relationship with Lin Yuan. My Fae and Lin Yuan's Fae are also so close. I'm so satisfied. Suddenly Lu Jie's eyes focused and he walked in front of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, the Dry Cliff Bandit King team can't wait any longer. Half an hour ago the phone you gave me rang 3 or 4 times. The Dry Cliff Bandit King team is starting to move out. Lin Yuan took out the phone that he had placed in the amber button-shaped Fae storage box. He saw that there were 5 or 6 missed calls on the phone that he had snatched from one of the 5. Lin Yuan raised his brows and looked toward the distant east. The sun was high in the sky, and the rattan armored army was advancing unsteadily in the forest. A yellow-brown elephant species Fei kept using its trunk to pull out small trees and put them in its mouth to chew. After chewing twice, it seemed to feel that the small trees didn't taste good. It disdainfully spat out the sawdust in its mouth onto the forest ground. Two pure white tusks waved from time to time, leaving a half-meter-deep gash on the trunk of a giant tree in the forest. "I owe you so much." The yellow-brown elephant species Fei had a tent on its back that could block the glaring sunlight in the forest. It could also effectively block the leaves, branches, and fruits that fell from the sky in the forest. A woman wearing a silk gown was sitting inside the tent. The woman's silk gown was painted with all kinds of flowers, and the flowers were decorated with vine leaves. The excessive decorations made the silk gown, which was of good quality, look a little tacky. It had lost the original lightness of the silk gown. The silk gown was wrapped with a purple fur cloak. The animal fur on the cloak was very long, but the edges of the cloak were not smooth. Many of the fur on the edges were tangled together. It was obvious that this cloak had been made for a long time. After a long period of exposure to the wind and sun, the fur on the edge of the cloak had already lost its oil. In the Divine Wood Federation, clothing was very particular. Clothing often symbolized a person's status. The clothes worn by ordinary people were made of coarse hemp silk drawn from plants. On the other hand, some servants or people who couldn't even live on could not even wear sackcloth. They could only wear clothes made of plant branches. Not only were these clothes made from tattered branches and leaves prickly, but they would also fall apart in a few days. He had to weave it himself again, which was very troublesome. After all, the Divine Wood Federation had the most plant phase. The Divine Wood Federation's power structure was the same as that of the Iron Hammer Federation. Creation Masters could establish clans of different classes according to their occupation rank. Family members established by Creation Masters had always been called nobles in the Divine Wood Federation. These people were more particular about their clothes. While the Divine Wood Federation was rich in plant species phase, it also had abundant insect species phase. The nobles preferred to wear spirit chi clothing that was weaved from insect species phase. They would also carve complicated decorations on the plain silk clothing. Apart from silk clothing, the most sought after by the nobles were fur-type spirit chi clothing. Beast species phase were very rare in the Divine Wood Federation, and every noble was proud of having a good leather fur-type spirit chi clothing. While the woman in the tent sat down, she deliberately put the fur cloak to the side. She was afraid that it would press down on the fur cloak, making the fur cloak not as upright and fluffy as before. Apart from the clothing, the woman had average looks. However, she had heavy makeup on her face. It made the woman's arrogance that had nowhere else to exude be tainted with a trace of worldly aura. At that moment, the woman gritted her teeth. While looking at the road ahead, she snorted coldly. "It's best if something happened to the 5 of you and were eaten by the wild beasts in the forest. If the 5 of you dare to come back, wait to be whipped into meat paste by the vines." Just when the woman was bored to death, she heard a feminine yet resonant voice shout from below. "Miss Luoya, the banana wood elephant has been hungry all the way. It's time to feed it something. If we don't feed the banana tree elephant now, it will be so hungry that it might go crazy when it sees a fruit tree." Roja waved her hand and summoned a huge yellow moth. This moth had a wingspan of 2 meters, but its body was very bloated. There were no patterns on the wings, but they were covered in fine powder. As a result, this butterfly species Fei did not have a trace of beauty and was even a little disgusting. Luoya jumped onto the moth Fei and let it carry her to the ground. Roja frowned and said to the tall long-haired man in front of her, "Fudi, I fed this banana tree elephant some spirit liquid that I got from my father. It has a chance to break through to the gold rank in a short time. When you feed it later, feed the banana wood elephant more nutritious food." The long-haired man, Fudi, was the leader of the Withered Cliff Bandit King group. He was also Luoya's loyal bootlicker. After establishing a relationship with Luoya, he coaxed her into becoming the vice-captain of the Withered Cliff Bandit King group. He had made use of Luoya's relationship to obtain plenty of Creation Master resources. The banana wood elephant was not Luoya's Fei, but the property of the Withered Cliff Bandit King group. It was a great thing for the entire Withered Cliff Bandit King group that the banana wood elephant had reached the gold rank. Fu Di was abnormally surprised, so he habitually licked Luoya's bootlicker. "Young lady Luoya, wait until we find the Deep Burn Federation's caravan. I will get my brothers to kill the ugly ones and the old ones. Detain all the handsome young ones for Miss Luoya." Luoya replied indifferently. "A small caravan that travels all over the world to trade for resources. They must be exposed to the elements. What good goods can they have? Thinking about this, Luoya felt that this operation had become boring. Luoya had poured in Creation Master resources for the Withered Cliff Bandit King group to become stronger, but it was not for these 300 bootlickers. With Luoya's Class 2 family background, she was definitely a noble lady in her small city. Back then, Luoya had been persuaded by Fu Di to become the vice-captain of the Withered Cliff Bandit King group because Fu Di had promised to find good goods for her. However, as Luoya played more, her standards were getting higher and higher. A few years ago she felt that they were good goods, but now they could no longer enter her eyes. This made Luoya abnormally vexed. Just as Luoya was inspecting the surroundings, she suddenly saw a figure rushing towards the Withered Cliff Bandit King group. End of chapter. Chapter 1171. A cool breeze blew, the sea was calm. The sunlight shone on the surface of the sea, making the sea look like a piece of golden jade. The gold on the surface of the sea and the blue under the sea blended together, forming a rippling warm green. Together with the coconut trees and the freely flying seabirds on the shore, it was as if this scene was made for romance. Suddenly the wind started blowing. The sea breeze caused the originally calm sea to ripple with clear and crystalline waves. The waves were like silk dancing in the wind, layer after layer wrapping the golden jade-like surface of the sea. A wave of fragrance blossomed on the sea. The moment this fragrance appeared, it sealed off the coast of the island. After the fragrance sealed off the island, lotus leaves grew one after another on the surface of the sea. The lotus leaves connected the sky, instantly covering the entire sea. It completely separated the island from the world, as if everything on the island had nothing to do with the world anymore. The moment the lotus leaves sealed off the island, a shout came from the island. "Who are you? Who dares to act so wantonly on this land?" The moment the words were spoken, 5 figures appeared in the sky above the island. There were men and women among the 5, all with different postures. One of the experts in the lead had an aura of eternal immortality on his body. The 5 experts released their aura at the same time. The overflowing pressure caused the entire island to shake. The seabirds flying freely above the island were directly blown into pieces by this monstrous pressure. 3 of the experts even waved their hands to summon their spirit creatures. After these spirit creatures were summoned, the pressure above the island became even denser. Suddenly, a light laugh came from within the fragrance. This should be the 3rd pagoda cannon lair on the way. The moment the light laugh came out, the experts above the island with undying aura acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They released their pressure and frantically swept the sea, as if trying to find the location of the person who just made the sound. However, after searching for a while, they still couldn't find anything, causing the experts above the island to shiver. At this time, a girl with waist-length blue hair quietly descended on the largest lotus leaf on the sea. The fragrance fills the air, the makeup reflects the light red. The singing is from the sky, the dance is from the royal palace. Different from the experts above the island who were on guard, the girl on the lotus leaf was very relaxed. There was even a hint of laziness in his expression. The woman's exquisite face had a pair of almond-shaped eyes that could be said to be peerless. The corners of her almond-shaped eyes were slightly raised, and the upward curve made the woman's eyes seem to be blooming with the softest of lotuses. This pair of phoenix eyes with a flirtatious arc appeared on the blue-haired waist-length woman's body, making the blue-haired waist-length woman's natural charm. However, the woman's sharp brows suppressed this charm. The charm of the woman's eyes clashed with the sharpness of her eyebrows, and the extreme feminine and masculine characteristics appeared on her face. It gave this face an extremely neutral beauty. Meanwhile, the woman's cherry lips and fine nose embellished the extreme androgynous beauty, brewing a quality that was even more charming. At this moment, the woman narrowed her eyes and looked at the experts of the Sky Tower cannon on the island. "Oh, there's actually an undying pagoda cannon. The strength of this nest is not bad. How lucky." The woman's words were filled with undisguised killing intent. The woman with waist-length blue hair suddenly appeared. However, after the woman appeared, the 4 seas calmed down, as if the entire ocean region had found its backbone. Following which, the water in the sea wantonly cheered, celebrating the arrival of the waist-length blue hair woman. The celebratory waves under the heaven-reaching lotus leaf collided and blended with each other, playing a water movement that could be said to be the sound of nature. The woman waved her hand lightly, and that hint of laziness disappeared from her expression. An aura that could command the world shot out from the woman's body. With a wave of her hand, the calm sea surface split into 8 with the woman as the center. 8 water pillars gathered the water of the 4 seas and rose up, forming a platform under the woman's feet. The waist-length blue-hair woman sat on the platform of the 4 seas, like a lotus blooming in the ocean. Looking at the celebratory platform that the seawater had built for the woman, the only female expert in the sky above the island said in surprise. Able to make the ocean region feel close to her, willing to obey her orders. This ability to communicate with nature, the spirit of heaven's favor. It's actually someone from Heaven Blessed Dojo. At the mention of Heaven Blessed Dojo, the experts of the pagoda canon on the island felt a bit more at ease. The female expert of the pagoda canon took a step forward and shouted at the blue lotus in the sea. What does your Heaven Blessed Dojo mean by this? Since when did Heaven Blessed Dojo dare to cause trouble for the pagoda canon? As soon as the female expert finished speaking, a phoenix cry that made the night fall resounded. The sun hanging high in the sky was still there, but the boundless darkness had completely enveloped the island. The extreme darkness prevented even a trace of the sun's radiance from shining on the island. Above the dome, a sturdy man wearing a black fishnet robe was looking disdainfully at the island under the night sky. Immediately after, the sturdy man's figure flashed, and a woman's mournful scream resounded in the sky above the island. At this moment, an extremely angry shout resounded from inside the island. Heaven Blessed Dojo dares to kill the Crimson Tower's chanter. How dare you? Today all of you will stay here. Burn to death, Scorching World Dragon. Immortal Body activate. A scorching and dazzling aura blossomed in the sky above the island, and in the blink of an eye, a world that resembled a lava hell was opened. In this world there were 8 volcanoes that were spewing scorching lava. In the crater of the volcanoes, there were 8 creation earth veins that resembled dragons and snakes. After the scorching world serpent opened up the infernal lava world, the dark night was excluded from the island. At the same time, the waters of the 4 seas began to boil in an instant. In the center of the flame world, a man with a square face and a dignified expression suddenly transformed into a red-scaled dragon that was nearly a kilometer long with obvious insect-like characteristics. A deafening dragon roar resounded in the sky. Immediately after, the 8 creation earth veins in the lava hell world's volcanoes merged into one and shot into the scorching world dragon's body. The scorching world dragon once again transformed into human form. This time, the scorching world dragon's human form was not a normal human form. The scorching world dragon's human form still retained 5 distinct Fey characteristics. 2 horns, a pair of dragon wings, a pair of dragon claws, a pair of dragon feet and a mouth of dragon teeth. The scorching world dragon wore red armor and wielded a dragon bone spear. A playful smile appeared on Bai Feng's face when she saw the scorching world dragon. Amazing hee. The immortal armor will only appear after forging the dragon eyes, dragon tail, dragon scales, and awakening the 4th refinement of immortal body. At this point, Bai Feng's heart sank. 4th refinement of immortal body is what you think is enough to keep us here? You're still far from it. As Bai Feng's voice fell, a black phoenix that blotted out the sky appeared in the sky. End of this chapter. Chapter 1172. After the black phoenix appeared in the sky, the air above the 4 seas became even thinner. It was as if even the air was lost in the eternal night and was about to disappear. There was nothing special about the black phoenix. However, this wasn't because the black phoenix's appearance was mediocre. Enveloped by the pure power of night, the black phoenix was like a phoenix-shaped black hole that had split open in the sky. At this moment, the black phoenix flapped its wings, and the boundless night sky above the island was instantly withdrawn into the black phoenix's body. The black phoenix looked even more reserved now that the island was illuminated again. It was so restrained that not even the slightest bit of its own aura leaked out. As Bai Feng transformed back into her true form, the scorching world roaring dragon, who had activated his immortal body, revealed a relaxed expression. Relieved, the scorching world Oregon mocked Bai Feng. Undying level 3, you haven't even awakened the colored armor on your undying body, yet you still shamelessly say you're far from it. Today you will stay here and be burned to ashes by the flames. Bai Feng said disdainfully as she flung her dark tail feather that was wrapped in the power of eternal night. How can an ordinary Fae like you understand the meaning of being blessed by the heavens? How can you easily imagine the power that the heavens love and care for? Dragon blood stays in the body, dragon marrow is nurtured in the bones. Among the main dragon species phase, you're considered excellent, but you ultimately didn't condense the Dragon Ball. For the rest of his life he will just eat and wait for death on the bloodline of the main dragon species. Today this dojo master will let a mortal like you know the difference between you and a favored spirit. Bai Feng's words were filled with arrogance. His tone was like that of a high and mighty chosen one mocking his inferior subjects. Bai Feng's insult made the scorching serpent dragon feel an uncontrollable rage. Under the fury of the scorching world serpent, the mantle at the bottom of the ocean was shaking violently, and several volcanoes popped up on the surface of the ocean. The lava from the volcano dyed the entire sea a reddish-brown. At that moment, the scorching sea dragon sharply discovered that the sky-engulfing lotus leaves that covered the island were still growing wantonly in the seawater that was even hotter than lava. It was not affected by the temperature of the sea at all. This discovery immediately made the scorching world Oregon panic. His eyes stared straight at the blue-haired woman who was sitting on the platform built with the water of the four seas. What baffled the scorching serpent was that the blue-haired girl was stuffing tomatoes into her mouth unhurriedly. His expression was relaxed. At this moment, an old man wearing a rose-red robe embroidered with a red pagoda-shaped pattern emerged from the island and arrived in front of the scorching world serpent in the sky. He grabbed the dragon bone spear that the blazing world roaring dragon was holding and said to Bai Feng with a grave expression, "I didn't expect to see the eternal night phoenix, one of the 16 masters of the blessed mansion, on this remote island. I forgot to introduce myself. I am the manager of this island's pagoda cannon. I am the pagoda reader under Lord Scarlet Page of the Scarlet Tower." After saying that, the old man's expression turned solemn and his tone was filled with threat. "It doesn't matter if my fae can defeat you or not. As one of the 16 Hall Lords of the Heaven-Blessed Dojo, you attacked my pagoda cannon and even killed a kneeling pagoda chanter personally chosen by Lord Scarlet Page. Your blessed mansion cannot withstand Lord Scarlet Page's wrath." The old man was dumbfounded by the current situation. He didn't understand why the blessed mansion, which had always been cautious with the pagoda cannon, had taken the wrong medicine. Not only had she come to find trouble with the pagoda cannon, but she had also dared to kill someone from the pagoda cannon. Although the old man was the pagoda reader under Scarlet Page of the Tower of Eternity, the death of a kneeling pagoda chanter during the next pagoda cannon meeting. Among the 36 chanters kneeling before the Scarlet Tower, there would be one missing member. Hence, this matter couldn't be concealed no matter what. Lord Scarlet Page would definitely find out. As for how Lord Scarlet Page would deal with the blessed mansion, the old man didn't care. Right now, the old man only hoped that the Eternal Night Phoenix would be intimidated by Lord Scarlet Page's reputation and back off. Although his fae, the scorching world roaring dragon's immortal body, was a class higher than the Eternal Night Phoenix, the Eternal Night Phoenix was a true blessed spirit. The old man couldn't help but shiver at the thought of the blessed spirit's uniqueness. After the old man finished speaking, before White Phoenix could speak, a huge opening appeared in the seawater. The island in the middle of the sea was originally located in the deep sea area, according to the opening in the sea surface. The movement of the mantle at the bottom of the sea could be easily seen. The two halves of the seawater suddenly turned into two blue lotus flowers. The two blue lotus flowers were like a huge clamp. They immediately sandwiched the small island and the experts of the pagoda cannon on the island. The small island was instantly crushed by the two lotus flowers and merged with the seawater. The scorching world roaring dragon used its immortal body to protect the old man, but the two orchid flowers' attack carried the power of the entire sea. Even if the attack couldn't hurt the scorching world roaring dragon, it could still do its best to protect its contracted fae. However, the remaining 3 Emperor-class experts of the pagoda cannon and the 3 Emperor-class experts' contracted faes were turned into debris that couldn't be found in the sea under the attack of the two blue lotus flowers. Blue Lotus, who was on the Imperial platform, said in a cold voice, "The Heaven-Blessed Mansion's Hall Masters have never been 16 but 17. Since you said that the Heaven-Blessed Mansion has 16 Hall Masters, you should know why we want to kill the people of the pagoda cannon today. The two of us can't beat the 8 pages of the pagoda cannon, but that doesn't mean everyone in the Heaven-Blessed Mansion is afraid of the 8 pages of the pagoda cannon. Our Heaven-Blessed Mansion has secluded ourselves from the world for 1,000 years and never caused trouble, but that doesn't mean we can be bullied by anyone. The Crimson Page's rage is nothing." Saying that, the blue-haired woman's face suddenly revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Then, she spoke to the old man with a playful expression. "You really should thank that stupid dragon of yours. Hee hee, The heat produced by the underwater volcano's eruption allowed my companion to recover from his injuries in advance. As soon as Lan Lian finished speaking, the brownish red sea that was dyed by the magma suddenly turned golden red. Red, magnificent red. Gold, dazzling gold. This red was like blood spreading on the seabed, while the gold was like a blazing warm sun rising from the seabed. In the sky above the sea, a tall red-haired man with a thin figure appeared beside Bai Feng, who had transformed into her true form. The man's heterochromatic eyes, one gold and one red, looked at Bai Feng seriously. "Brother Bai Feng, leave the people of the pagoda canon to me." The red-haired man's tone was calm and warm, but it had unquestionable determination and seriousness. Upon hearing the red-haired man's words, Bai Feng sighed and transformed back into her human form. ABC. Chapter 1173. Bai Feng said as she looked at the wound on the red-haired man's arm that had yet to fully heal. "Shueshua, don't force yourself." Shueshua shook his head and said, "Brother White Phoenix, after I awakened the Corona Jade Spider bloodline and transformed into a favored spirit, you haven't seen the exclusive skill that I obtained after advancing to an immortal species, right? Today I'll let you have a good look." Hearing that, Bai Feng's eyes lit up, revealing a look of anticipation. Then, he looked at the blazing world-roaring dragon and the old man, whose auras were clearly in a mess after the Blue Lotus's attack. "I haven't told you before, but I don't like people calling my main body by its name. I like people to call me Bai Feng. My brother Shueshua is the 17th Dojo Lord of the Blessed Dojo. Spirit of Heaven's favor, the bloodline of the celestial Corona Jade Spider has not disappeared from the Heaven's Favor Mansion." Hearing this, the old man's eyes flickered. Aside from the various hall masters, it wasn't as if the Blessed Ones didn't have other treasures. The Heaven's Blessed Mansion protected the lives of many treasures favored by the heavens. It was just that the strength of these Heaven's Chosen Ones was too low, not enough to take on the position of Blessed One's hall master. From the moment the Blue Lotus appeared, it was true that it had mobilized the power of the four seas. However, Lan Lian had never clearly displayed her aura and pressure. Heavenly chosen spirits were favored by heaven and earth. Heavenly chosen spirits that possessed the power of water were the favored children of the water. All the rivers in the world would strive to please it. Thus, it was not difficult for such a heavenly chosen spirit to mobilize the power of the four seas. However, the furious attack just now proved that the blue-haired woman on the platform was also a dojo mistress of the heaven-blessed dojo. The woman did not activate her immortal body, nor did she use her body martial transformation, but a casual strike from her had such power. This meant that the woman was probably more powerful than the eternal night Nether Phoenix. After realizing this, the old man knew that he and the Scorching Serpent wouldn't be able to escape. If it was just White Phoenix, the old man knew that even if he used his sacred source life form and the scorching world-roaring dragon activated its immortal body, he would not be able to escape the eternal night Dark Phoenix's attack. But there were still a few hours before nightfall. These few hours were enough for him to find a way to seek Lord Scarlet Page's protection. If the eternal night Nether Phoenix continued to chase after him, the blessed mansion would have one less owner. Now, however, there was an additional divine spirit that wielded the power of water. Moreover, this was the ocean, and every single tide was a tentacle of the chosen spirit of water. Under the pursuit of Si Zhang's divine spirit of water, there was no way he could escape the sea. 2 attacks from the 2 heavens blessed dojo masters killed 4 of the Scarlet Tower's kneeling chanters. From this, it could be seen that the other party had no intention of letting him leave alive. The old man was already prepared to die, but when it rains, it pours. The old man, who had the will to die, suddenly realized that the spirit of providence that had attacked the base of the pagoda cannon wasn't one of the 2 spirit of providence. There were 3 of them. He thought too highly of himself. When the blue-haired woman first appeared, she said that this was the lair of the 3rd pagoda cannon. Presumably, the other 2 bases of the pagoda cannon had also been attacked by the 3 heaven-blessed dojo masters. As for why there was no news, the old man was not confused at all. It would be strange if news of the 3 heaven-blessed dojo masters attacking together had spread. However, looking at the current situation, the injured heaven-blessed dojo master had decided to attack his main fae, the scorching roaring dragon, alone. Under the old man's perception, the heaven-blessed dojo master discovered that his strength had just evolved from a creation breed to an immortal breed. His immortal body was only at first refinement. The old man believed that with the support of his sacred source life form, the scorching roaring dragon might be able to kill the heaven-blessed dojo master. With that in mind, the old man shouted at Shueshua, Baifeng and Lan Lian. Let's make a bet. If I defeat this heaven-blessed dojo master with the bloodline of the Sky Corona Jade Spider, I won't hurt him and you'll let me live. Baifeng was speechless when she heard the old man's words. Old thing, let's not talk about whether or not you can defeat my brother. Even if my brother falls into a disadvantageous position, do you think I and this iron lady beside me are joking? As soon as Baifeng finished speaking, she felt a strong gust of wind rushing towards her face. Baifeng reached out and caught a tomato out of habit. He picked up the tomato and put it into his mouth with a smile on his face. I've cheated a tomato. Lan Lian was infuriated. At this moment, Lan Lian's expression was still relaxed. He recalled the exclusive skill that Shueshua had obtained when he had completely activated the celestial jade spider bloodline after advancing to an immortal species. Lan Lian felt that it would take at most 3 minutes for this chaotic sea region to completely return to peace. The old man was enraged when he heard Baifeng's words. His anger was mixed with hysterical despair. This anger didn't just come from the ridicule in Baifeng's words. It was because the old man knew that he had fallen into a predicament where he would surely die today. Under this predicament, he had no hope of seeing the activation of the hibernating one. It was also impossible for them to witness the true revival of the world of spiritual energy under the guidance of the pagoda cannon. The old man, who knew he was going to die, calmed down after his anger and despair. The old man looked straight at Shueshua and said in a hoarse voice, "What the blessed dojo has done today is no different from declaring war on the pagoda cannon." The old man placed his hand on his chest and looked at the crimson pagoda mark on his robe. Immediately after, a cup burning with raging flames appeared in the old man's hand. The old man chanted, "The cup of fire, ignite the flames of the heavens with the power of lava. Burn your body, scorching world Drake." As the old man chanted, the entire world seemed to become a part of the cup of fire in an instant. The power of lava at the bottom of the sea boiled violently. The power of lava formed a stream that rushed up from the bottom of the sea and poured into the cup of fire. As the power of lava poured into the goblet of fire, the entire sky was set ablaze. The world was filled with burning clouds of fire. The clouds of fire scattered flames like rain. These flocculent flames caused the temperature between heaven and earth to suddenly reach a peak. Under this intense temperature, the sea level dropped at a speed visible to the naked eye. After activating its immortal body, the Scorching World Drake held the Dragonbone Spear upside down. The aura of the Scorching World Drake and the Dragonbone Spear merged into one. After activating its immortal body, the Scorching World Drake performed Spirit Return, and entered its most powerful battle form. At this moment, the body of the Scorching World Drake that was burning the world grew several dragon bones that broke through its flesh. These dragon bones were extremely sharp and were surrounded by a high temperature that could burn everything. The cold light that flickered at the tips of the bones manifested the lethality of these protruding dragon bones. ABC. Chapter 1174. The blazing aurochs did not engage in close combat with Shueshua immediately. Instead, it coordinated with the sacred source life form, the Goblet of Fire, and directed the flames to attack Shueshua. This seemingly perfunctory attack was the blazing aurochs' attempt to test Shueshua's strength. The blazing aurochs had never come into contact with a heaven-blessed spirit before, let alone fight one. Hence, the blazing aurochs were unconvinced by Baifeng, who was a level 3 immortal. Moreover, Shueshua had just become an immortal species. However, the caution of a contractor forced the blazing aurochs to be cautious. Shueshua did not move when he saw the flames flying towards him. Shueshua's eyes were filled with endless sorrow and remembrance as he watched the burning world. The day his daughter was born, the day before the Jade Gui died, was the happiest day of his life. The Jade Gui that gave birth had set the world ablaze. When Shueshua saw the same beautiful scene again, it was filled with sorrow and sorrow. He thought of his daughter, whose fate was unknown, and his wife, who had died at the hands of the 5 pages of truth. The sorrow and remembrance in Shueshua's eyes instantly turned into determination. I thought everyone in the Tower Cannon would be familiar with the uniqueness of the Celestial Corona Jade Spider's bloodline. Playing with fire in front of the Celestial Corona Jade Spider's bloodline? You overestimate yourself. Sundial, Extreme Yang Fire, Celestial Corona Jade Robe. When Shueshua shouted the words, Celestial Corona Jade Robe, the setting sun in the sky shone with dazzling light. It was unknown if the sun had absorbed the light from the fire clouds, or if the light from the sun had covered the fire clouds and dimmed them. In short, Only the rising sun shone with a jade-like luster. The jade-like flames formed a robe that covered Shuaishua's body. At this moment, all the flames in the sky, including the sacred source lifeform's goblet of fire, flew towards the celestial corona jade robe on Shuaishua's body. The celestial corona jade robe greedily absorbed all the hot flames and became more solid. Shuaishua pointed at the spot between his eyebrows. In an instant, a bright red spot appeared on his forehead. Shuaishua, who wore a jade robe and had blood on his forehead, walked toward the old man and the blazing world roaring dragon in a leisurely manner. No one knew if it was because the bright red color between Shuaishua's eyebrows was too soul-stirring, or if the jade-clothed Shuaishua was like a sun god descending to the mortal world. With every step that Shuaishua took, the pressure that the old man and the scorching world Oregon had to endure increased. The blazing world roaring dragon could no longer endure the pressure that Shuaishua was exerting on it. It suddenly attacked Shuaishua. As soon as the heavy fist, which was covered with bone spikes, touched Shuaishua's sky gui jade robe, the left arm of the dragon, which had activated its immortal body and entered the soul return state, was burned into nothingness by the robe. Shuaishua looked at the scorching world roaring dragon in front of him and said, "The temperature of the celestial corona jade robe is the temperature of the sun's surface. A main dragon species Fae that hasn't even condensed a dragon ball has to fear the sun even if it knows how to play with fire." As he spoke, Shuaishua spread his arms and embraced the blazing world roaring dragon. Shuaishua did not loosen his hold on the blazing world roaring dragon no matter how it struggled in his arms. After a while, there was only an immortal body left in Shuaishua's arms. The dragon on the immortal body was the blazing world roaring dragon's original appearance. The immortal body was constantly changing its shape, switching back and forth between the blazing world roaring dragon's fourth phase immortal body and the blazing world roaring dragon's immortal body. Shuaishua casually stored the blazing world roaring dragon's immortal body into the diamond phase storage box. Then he waved his hand, and the sky gui jade robe separated into a ribbon. It wrapped around the old man who was holding the cup of fire and had just summoned 2 creation breed phase. Shuaishua tossed the cracked cup of fire in his hand. The remnant of a 6-star sacred source life form was considered a good item. Shuaishua secretly looked forward to it. If my daughter hadn't died, Sister Ziqing could have forged the remains of the 6-star sacred source life form, the goblet of fire, into a precious artifact for my daughter. Blue Lotus eyes were filled with admiration as she looked at Shuaishua, who stood shoulder to shoulder with the setting sun. Blue Lotus seemed to see the orange-haired woman who always had a smile on her face, a smile brighter than the sun. Bai Feng just stared at Shuaishua with her mouth wide open and kept muttering, "Hugging a sister and killing her, hugging a sister and killing her, hugging a sister and killing her." Everything was as Blue Lotus had expected. Within 3 minutes, the sea region that had been bustling for a long time had calmed down. The only difference from before was that a romantic island had disappeared from this part of the sea. Blue Lotus, who continued to rush toward the Radiance Federation, slowly recovered from the excitement of destroying the 3 pagoda lairs. She suddenly remembered that Big Sister Ziqing had said, "If someone is looking for trouble, don't be afraid." What if they were to look for trouble now? However, even if they took the initiative to look for trouble, Blue Lotus felt that Big Sister Ziqing would not blame them. When Shuaishua had said he wanted to go on a mission and Big Sister Ziqing had agreed, Big Sister Ziqing must have thought of this scene. Chapter 1175. Upon seeing that Bai Feng was being stupid again, Lan Lian threw 7 tomatoes at her. 5 of them were caught by Bai Feng, while 1 was caught by her mouth. Bai Feng simply did not have the space to catch the 7th tomato, so she could only watch the tomato hit her face and blossom. Thinking that they were going to the Radiance Federation this time, Lan Lian assumed the posture of a big sister in the team. The 3 of us should report to Zhao Xia and Night Leaning Moon before going to the Radiance Federation this time. Along the way, we've also heard the news that the Azure Federation's 2 Azure envoys brought sequence 90 to 100 Azure 100 out of the Radiance Federation. In this case, it's fine if we don't get into trouble when we go to the Radiance Federation's territory. If we get into trouble, even if we're the blessed spirits of the undying species, as the Hall Masters of the Heavens Blessed Dojo, the Radiance Federation will not give us any face. Upon hearing that, Shuaishua nodded and recalled that the Moon Empress and Chief Guard Yi had helped Yu Gue. Although he had not been able to save Yu Gue's life, Shuaishua still had a grateful look on his face. Bai Feng had also used her tongue to clean the tomato sauce on her face. Upon seeing Lan Lian's serious face, Bai Feng said smugly, "What trouble can we get into? What kind of trouble can we get into? If the people in the Radiance Federation don't take the initiative to provoke me, I won't take the initiative to cause trouble. But if they provoke me, I can't swallow my anger." Upon hearing that, Lan Lian looked at Bai Feng speechlessly as though she was looking at a fool. "Then when we reach the Radiance Federation, let's split into 2 teams and act separately. I'll be in one team with Xue Shuo and you'll be in the other team. The Radiance Federation has 7 stabilizing weapons. If you're not afraid, go ahead and show off. If something happens, don't look for Xue Shuo and me. We don't have any face in the Radiance Federation." Upon hearing Lan Lian's words, Bai Feng wanted to refute, but she thought of the Radiance Federation's legendary 7 stabilizing weapons. She subconsciously shrank her neck and did not dare to be naughty anymore. While the immortal battle was happening on the island, Luo Ye's maiden heart, which had not been stirred for almost 10 years, was once again stirred. As a noble lady from a Class 2 Creation Master family, anyone in the town would have to bow and address her as Mississippi. Growing up in such an environment, Luo Ye didn't believe in love at all, let alone love at first sight. But this person is like a rainbow. When he meets the sky, he will know that he is there. At this moment, looking at the boy running towards her, Luo Ye believed in the so-called love at first sight. At first glance, Roya's eyes couldn't move away from the figure that was running towards her. Colorful fireworks ignited in Luo Ye's heart. This made Roha feel a throbbing from the depths of her soul. The young man was in a sorry state. His clothes had been cut open for some reason. It was also covered with sticky mud, which had now completely dried up. As the young man ran, his clothes would be pulled and the dried mud would be crushed. The youth's face was also covered in mud. However, even though the young man was in such a sorry state, he still faintly exuded a refreshing aura. It was like a small white poplar bathed in the sun. Not only that, but with Luo Ye's eyesight, she could tell at a glance that the youth's clothes were extraordinary. The jewels hanging from the youth's torn spirit chi clothes were produced from the Class 1 and Class 2 underground dimensional rift. Such jewels weren't cheap in the Divine Wood Federation. Just from the clothes, Luo Ye could determine that this youth was a noble like her. Luo Ye thought that she wouldn't be able to control the desire in her heart and would treat the youth like other playthings in the past. However, apart from the love at first sight, Luo Ye's desire was completely suppressed at the bottom of her heart. The beautiful throbbing made Luo Ye shy, and she subconsciously tugged at her clothes. She shook the purple fur cloak that symbolized wealth that was draped over her body. The Dry Cliff Bandits' leader, Fu Di, was also startled when he saw Lin Yuan. From the color of Lin Yuan's hair and eyes, Fu Di could determine that the youth in front of him was from the Deep Lush Federation. The Deep Lush Federation was a federation with a commercial civilization, and there were many rules that needed to be secretly followed. One of the rules was that within a region, as long as the Deep Lush Federation's caravans were stationed to hold a gathering and trade goods, the other Deep Lush Federation's caravans couldn't stay here and compete for resources. It could be said that 99% of the people from the Deep Lush Federation that appeared in the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation's territory were members of the caravans. Of course, there were always exceptions. The Deep Lush Federation, which was a federation with a commercial pillar, also had some mysterious reclusive clans. It was rumored that the reclusive clans controlled immeasurable wealth. When the Deep Lush Federation's reclusive clans' descendants were young, they would choose to train in the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation's territories. The reclusive clans' descendants that went out to train would often have powerful retainers following them to deal with any possible emergencies. As the leader of the Dry Cliff Bandits, Fu Di could definitely be considered an experienced adventurer. Even if he hadn't been to this forest before, just based on the strength of the phase he encountered, Fu Di could determine that there wouldn't be any overly powerful phase in this forest. Otherwise, they would have been attacked by powerful phase if they swaggered around in the forest. Fu Di had been searching for good goods for Luo Ye all these years. Therefore, Fu Di understood Luo Ye's preferences the best. The youth in front of him had dirt on his face, and he couldn't see his appearance clearly. However, the youth gave off a feeling that Luo Ye definitely liked. Fu Di was certain that after wiping the youth's face clean, as long as the youth wasn't ugly, Luo Ye would definitely love him. If Luo Ye was happy, she or the other members of the Dry Cliff Bandits might be able to obtain some Creation Master resources. This way the overall strength of the Dry Cliff Bandits would be enhanced. Fu Di originally wanted to ask 2 members of the bandits to capture the youth. However, Fu Di then thought about it. If he personally brought the youth over, it was possible that Luo Ye would be happy and generously give him some rewards. Selfishly, Fu Di took a step forward and yelled at Lin Yuan. Kid, get over here. You are from the Deep Lush Federation's caravan, right? Just as Fu Di shouted, he heard Luo Ye say angrily to him. What are you shouting for? Be civilized. What kind of manners are you shouting? After hearing Luo Ye's words, Fu Di was confused. Big sister, your voice is much louder than mine just now. Also, when did Big sister talk about manners? Under the watchful eyes of the 300-meter bandits, Big sister, you have had a lot of fun too. Immediately after, Fu Di saw Luo Ye's face blushing as she stepped forward and spoke to the youth who had stopped. ABC. Chapter 1176. Big brother, come over here. Big brother, come over here. While speaking, Luo Ye took out a silk handkerchief and handed it to him from afar. She said even more shyly. We have water here. Big brother, wipe your face with the handkerchief first. Don't be afraid. I am from Namu City's 2-star family, the Luo family. If you encounter any trouble, you can tell me directly. I might be able to help you. Luo Ye's delicate voice sounded. He subconsciously thought of Wang Fuxiang. Her voice is too coquettish. Then he thought of what the 5 Dry Cliff bandits had said. Lin Yuan felt that Luo Ye's current state was somewhat different from what the 5 scouts had said. While he was thinking, the jaws of the 300 Dry Cliff bandits, including Fu Di, almost dropped to the ground. Because in their impression, they didn't remember when Roja spoke to someone in such a tone. However, Fu Di's brows immediately furrowed. He looked at Lin Yuan with a somewhat complicated gaze, which was then filled with determined killing intent. Fu Di was ambitious and rather courageous. However, the Dry Cliff bandits had been developing for many years, and they could only barely maintain their level. This was because no matter how hard Fu Di and the Dry Cliff bandits worked, they wouldn't be able to increase their combat power significantly without the resources of Creation Masters. It was possible to find Creation Masters to help with Radiance dollars and spiritual ingredients in the Radiance Federation. However, Creation Masters were absolute nobles in the Divine Wood Federation. If you took the deep Brahmin dollars and spiritual ingredients to find a Creation Master for help, they wouldn't just refuse to help without any connections. They might even steal the deep Sanskrit coins and spirit materials you've brought with you. The Dry Cliff Bandits' current development was all because Fu Di had met Luo Ye and obtained Creation Master resources from her. Therefore, no matter what, Fu Di had to tie Luo Ye to the Dry Cliff Bandits' war chariot. Fu Di had always been very confident about this. This was because Fu Di knew that Luo Ye was a playboy. He just had to constantly find new stimuli for Luo Ye according to her preferences. Luo Ye would always stay in the Dry Cliff Bandits and occasionally pour some Creation Master resources into the Dry Cliff Bandits when she was in a good mood. But now there was a player who didn't play by the rules and suddenly shyly played with feelings. To put it simply, Roja didn't need any new stimulation. This situation will make him and the Dry Cliff Bandits lose their role in Roja's hands. In the worst-case scenario, Luo Ye might be waiting for the youth from the Deep Fanatic Federation to leave before leaving with him. When that time came, the Dry Cliff Bandits would return to their previous state of not having any Creation Master resources. Fu Di had thought things through clearly, but it wasn't easy to put them into practice. Fu Di felt that if he rashly killed the youth in front of him, Luo Ye would definitely not be willing. Luo Ye's main fei, the Mist Anti-Poison Moth, was Gold 7/Flawless. Fu Di's main fei, the Flesh-Devouring Vine, was only Gold 7/Elite. Although the Devouring Vines and the Mist Anti-Poison Moths were of the same level, there was a difference in quality. Looking at the shyness in Luo Ye's eyes, as well as the inexplicable affection, Lin Yun couldn't help but laugh. Fu Di was sure that as long as he made a move against this youth, Roja wouldn't hesitate to attack him and the 300 brothers behind him. Fu Di prayed that after the youth wiped his face, he would reveal a beehive garlic nose, purple lips, and triangular eyes. His face would also be covered with spots and bumps. However, this thought was completely shattered in Fu Di's mind in less than 5 seconds. After wiping away the mud, the youth's face was clean and fair, with distinct edges. He had thick eyebrows and long eyelashes, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. It was as if a bottomless pool was brewing in his bright and piercing eyes. While the youth's temperament was gentle, it also carried a very high-level mystery. The flawless nose on the youth's face increased the charm of his eyes by at least 30%. Seeing that Roja was so shy that she lowered her head and didn't dare to look at the youth, the killing intent in Fu Di's eyes intensified. He tried his best to resist the urge to attack the youth. The rest of the Dry Cliff Bandits weren't fools. They naturally knew that the current development of the Dry Cliff Bandits was all due to Roha's creation master resources. Lin Yuan's appearance gave everyone the same sense of crisis as Fu Di. Roha's back was facing Fu Di and the Dry Cliff Bandits, so she couldn't see their eyes. However, Lin Yuan could see it clearly. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. He glanced at Fu Di and the bandits behind him. He opened his mouth and thanked Roha in a clear voice. Roha's current situation made Lin Yuan adjust his original plan at the right time. Originally, Lin Yuan only wanted to use Roha and the others to establish a relationship with the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravan. Then he would capture Roha and bring her to the underground palace and use any possible means to get the information he needed from her. He would also get rid of the information and understand the Divine Wood Federation situation in a real sense from the natives. However, Lin Yuan now felt that it was more useful to leave Roha outside than to capture her and bring her back to the forbidden area. Roha came from a 2-star family in the Divine Wood Federation's Namu City. She definitely had a transcendent status in Namu City. Through Roha's relationship, it might be easier for him to obtain spatial spiritual materials than through the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravan. Of course, this didn't mean that Lin Yuan had decided to give up on establishing a relationship with the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravan. Lin Yuan planned to use both sides of the relationship. Luoya had been communicating with Lin Yuan as the young lady of Namu City's 2-star family. He didn't even mention that he was the vice commander of the Dry Cliff Bandits, as if he wanted to draw a clear line between himself and the Dry Cliff Bandits. The sense of urgency in Fu Di's heart grew stronger. Fu Di stepped forward and said to Luoya, "Miss Luoya, the purpose of our Withered Cliff Caravan's trip this time is to obtain some metals, spirit materials, and furs from the Iron Hammer Federation. This little brother is obviously from the Deep Burn Federation. Miss, can you ask this little brother if he knows where the Deep Burn Federation's caravan is? That saves us the trouble of searching everywhere." When Fu Di came forward to talk, Luoya immediately became nervous. Even if the people of the Deep Lush Federation weren't merchants, there wasn't a single person who didn't hate the bandits. Bandits were different from bandit groups. Bandit groups mainly looted resources. After accomplishing their goal, they wouldn't kill the members of the Deep Burn Federation's caravans. However, the bandits were different. Luoya could no longer remember how much blood the Dry Cliff Bandits had stained their hands. However, when Luoya heard Fu Di refer to the Dry Cliff Bandits as the Dry Cliff Caravan, her expression relaxed. Luoya's expression relaxed and she gave Fu Di an appreciative look. Then she took out a bottle of spirit liquid and threw it to Fu Di. End of this chapter. Chapter 1177. Upon seeing the bottle of dark red spirit liquid that Luoya gave him, Fu Di revealed an ecstatic expression. He did not know how long he had begged Luoya for this bottle of spirit liquid. Luoya had always held this bottle of spirit liquid in her hand and had no intention of giving it to him. However, because he had mediated, Luoya had given him this bottle of spirit liquid. With this bottle of spirit liquid, Fu Di's main fei, the flesh-devouring vine, could also be upgraded to flawless, just like Luoya's mist anti-poison moth. While pleasantly surprised, Fu Di's heart was also more worried. Such a generous reward showed that Luoya cared about the youth in front of her. Luoya was afraid that the youth would find out about her identity as the Dry Cliff Bandits' deputy commander, which would arouse his disgust. This also showed that Luoya was not playing around this time. She was serious. While Fu Di was pondering, he heard the youth's clear voice. A Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift opened up ahead, and I saw a Class 3 spiky beetle. In the dimensional rift, I got separated from my retainer. I am not from the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravan, but I know that there is a small caravan that is holding a gathering more than 100 kilometers north. As he spoke, he no longer tried to restrain his aura like before. When he relaxed and restrained his aura, Luoya suddenly felt that the youth in front of her had an indescribable noble aura. This kind of noble aura could only be cultivated by those who were truly held up to the clouds. Luoya had only seen such a noble aura in the Divine Wood Federation's main city's Class 3 or Class 4 family members. After this touch of noble aura was revealed from the youth's body, the gems produced from the Class 1 and Class 2 underground dimensional rift on the youth's clothes seemed to have turned into clay. They were completely suppressed by the youth's aura. It was like placing a piece of fluorite next to a slate, and one could easily feel the fluorite's luster. However, if the slate was moved away and replaced with a piece of glass-type jade, in comparison, the fluorite would become dim. Luoya was even more fascinated by Lin Yuan's noble aura. In fact, Lin Yuan had deliberately released a few layers of his aura because he felt that since he wanted to build a relationship with Luoya, he had to show the corresponding foundation. Only by taking out the corresponding foundation could Luoya ignore other factors. He was still willing to trade with him sincerely. After Lin Yuan pointed the way, Fu Di gritted his teeth and led the 300-meter brothers toward the deep lush Federation's caravan. Luoya originally wanted to invite Lin Yuan to call them banana wood elephants. But when he saw the banana wood elephant throwing out brown objects from its tail from time to time, he hurriedly rejected Luoya's invitation. This banana tree elephant had just been fed by the dry cliff bandits, so there was no space left in its stomach. He was in a hurry to pour it into his stomach. If one were to ride on the back of a banana tree elephant with the digestion speed of the elephant, the smell would definitely not dissipate. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan had rejected its request to ride with it, it could sense the disdain in Lin Yuan's eyes toward the banana wood elephant. Roha directly commanded 3 members of the dry cliff bandits to lead the banana tree elephant to the back of the group. The banana wood elephant was now a silver X/elite Fey and was just a step away from reaching gold. Since Lin Yuan was so disgusted with the banana tree elephant, it was clear that he looked down on it. This made Luoya even more convinced that Lin Yuan's foundation was extraordinary. Luoya thought to herself, if Lin Yuan is an ordinary person in the Deep Enlightenment Federation, the old man at home will never allow me to marry him. But if Lin Yuan is a person with a foundation, then the snobbish old man at home might not be so opposed. At the thought of this, Luoya's heart suddenly tightened. A thought appeared in her mind. What if Lin Yuan's family was more powerful than the 2-star family that she was in? At the thought of this, Luoya felt that she should treat Lin Yuan better. After walking for less than an hour, Fu Di had sent at least 2 people to deliver food to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan did not reject it. It was not that Lin Yuan looked down on Fu Di, but the Princess Luoya's vicious venom law had already reached Myth 3. With the protection of the Myth 3 vicious venom law, even if a platinum venom-type Fey bit him, he would only suffer some superficial wounds. At most, Lin Yuan would suffer some superficial wounds. After eating the 2 pieces of bread that she had put the bronze intestine severing stone garlic's juice, he did not die from the pain in his stomach. He was still chatting and laughing with Luoya as if nothing had happened. In the team, Fu Di fiercely threw the bottle in his hand on the ground and cursed softly. Fuck. When I go back, I'll burn your store. I'll beat you half to death. You dog. It's fine that you usually sell my hemostasis medicine with shoddy goods and cheat me of my money. You're too damn black-hearted, but you're selling fake poisons. The more Fu Di thought about it, the angrier he got. He took out another piece of bread and put jam in it. Then, he steeled his heart and said to the vice-captain beside him, who was in charge of the dry cliff bandit supplies. Thunder, take out the tail of the pinnacle gold rotten blood hook scorpion we got. Upon hearing that, the burly man called Thunder by Fu Di took out a walnut-shaped fruit. He threw the walnut-shaped fruit on the ground, and a large pile of messy supplies appeared on the ground. Upon seeing this, Luoya, who was walking in front of the team, said with dissatisfaction. Fu Di, what are you doing? I didn't give you a walnut for you to use like this. The storage ability of the bronze walnut tree's walnut storage ability will disappear after 10 uses. Don't tell me you don't know this common sense? Hearing Luoya's words, Fu Di hurriedly smiled. I need to pick some materials and trade them with the Deep Vendor Federation's merchant guild for hides and metals. When Luoya heard this, she immediately felt that she had wronged Fu Di. After thinking for a moment, Luoya threw a bottle of spiritual liquid at Fu Di and said, I concocted this bottle of spirit fluid myself. It can upgrade a pinnacle bronze Fey to silver. If you don't need it, just watch and see how it's distributed. Holding the spirit liquid that Luoya threw over, Fu Di wasn't happy. Instead, a vicious look appeared on his face. Fu Di's words were mainly to see if Luoya had made up her mind to let the Withered Cliff bandits disguise themselves as the Withered Cliff caravan and give up on robbing the Deep Cult Federation's caravan. As expected, Luoya gave up. Fu Di, who was on the road again, took the rotten blood hook scorpion's tail and squeezed the venom into the bread's jam without leaving a trace. Fu Di sneered in his heart. Kid, you were lucky to eat a fake poison. This time, I'll let you eat the venom from the pinnacle gold rotten blood hook scorpion's tail. Let's see if you will die. Chapter 1178. Fu Di was afraid that Lin Yuan would smell the faint fishy smell of the rotten blood hook scorpion's venom in the jam, so he added 2 more spoonfuls of jam to the bread. Fu Di quickly walked to Lin Yuan's side while holding the bread with added ingredients. He grinned and said very politely to Lin Yuan, "Brother, I wonder how long it will take for us to trade with the Depreme caravan when we reach our destination. This time we, the Dry Cliff Bandits, the Chamber of Commerce has prepared a lot of resources. I'm sure we won't be able to finish all of them by nightfall. Have another piece of bread. I won't be hungry at night. I've added a lot of jam from Namu City into this bread. I guarantee it'll be delicious." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan looked at Fu Di playfully. Lin Yuan's eyes alarmed Fu Di, and he subconsciously thought that Lin Yuan had discovered something fishy about the bread. Before Fu Di could figure out what the problem was, a voice suddenly rang out. Immediately after, Fu Di's entire face turned black. "Roha," he said, that there was a lot of jam in the bread. "Do you want another one?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Fu Di subconsciously withdrew the bread that he was about to hand to Lin Yuan. The two-star Luo family knew that Luoya was with the Withered Cliff Bandits. If Roha was poisoned to death, it would be his bread. The Luo clan would definitely find him and pull out his tendons and bones. With the power and connections of a two-star family like the Luo family, there was no place for him, a leader of a small bandit group, to hide. If the Luo family placed a bounty for Creation Master resources on him, the Dry Cliff Bandits might even sell him out. Unlike Fu Di's panic and worry, when Luoya heard Lin Yuan ask if she wanted to eat another piece of bread, she only felt that she had received Lin Yuan's concern. His heart was filled with sweetness, as if a ball of soft honey had flowed into his heart. However, Luoya had already eaten a piece of bread. If she continued to eat, she was afraid that Lin Yuan would think that she was a foodie. In order to maintain the image of a lady, Luoya shook her head and said shyly, "Little brother, my stomach is very small, I don't want to eat anymore." Seeing Luoya shake her head in rejection, Fu Di's expression softened. Lin Yuan didn't intend to tease Fu Di anymore and took the bread from him. Under Fu Di's expectant gaze, he began to eat. At that moment, Lin Yuan was not in the mood to act with Fu Di. This was because Lin Yuan's mind was completely focused on the walnut that Fu Di had just taken out. The object holding walnut was a kind of spatial spirit material, even though it didn't contain much spatial energy. However, if there were enough walnuts, it would be possible to support his travel between the Divine Wood Federation and the Radiance Federation. He had just seen the function of the storage walnut. It was a very clumsy storage item. Since the Dry Cliff Bandits could afford such a clumsy storage item, Lin Yuan felt that it would not be rare in the Divine Wood Federation. In addition, when he had just eaten the 2 pieces of bread, he had clearly felt that poisonous substances had been added into them. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the vicious poison law allowed him to resist poison. If they ate a meal with poisonous substances, they would feel that the food with poisonous substances was more delicious. He had eaten this bread to verify his conjecture. As a result, Lin Yuan found that it was really the case. Apart from the sweetness and sourness of the jam and the fragrance of the wheat cake, this bread also had a special fragrance. It gave Lin Yuan the feeling of eating crispy chicken-flavored fried scorpions. While eating the bread, Lin Yuan pretended to casually ask Luoya, who was beside him, "Are the object-holding walnuts you mentioned sold in Namu City?" Luoya's eyes lit up when she heard that. Lin Yuan had asked her if there were any object-holding walnuts for sale in Namu City. This meant that Lin Yuan probably had plans to go to Namu City. However, Luoya was immediately puzzled. Not to mention Namu City, which had a 3-star family clan, had object-holding walnuts. Even in those small towns with only 1-star clans, there were some of them. The puzzled Luoya's heart stirred. Could it be that Lin Yuan didn't know anything about the Divine Wood Federation? If that was the case, Luoya felt that Lin Yuan was more likely to be a descendant of the Deep Brahmin Federation's hidden wealthy clan. When ordinary youths in the Deep Brahmin Federation were 11 or 12 years old, they would follow caravans and travel between the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation. In such an environment, even a fool would not know about the object-holding walnuts. Only the descendants of the Deep Brahmin Federation's hidden wealthy clans would receive elite education from their clans from a young age. They would learn abilities and nurture their bearing. For example, social experience and common sense were all mastered in a short period of time after coming out to train. The more Luoya thought about it, the more she felt that she had seen through the truth. Luoya decided to test Lin Yuan. Luoya first answered Lin Yuan's question. Namu City's auction house often has silver object-holding walnuts for auction. Occasionally, gold object-holding walnuts will appear. As for bronze object-holding walnuts, as long as you know a Class 1 Creation Master in Namu City, you will be able to obtain them easily. It just so happens that I am a Class 1 creation master. I don't have any object-holding walnuts on hand, but I have 7 or 8 object-holding walnut trees at home. If you want object-holding walnuts, I will go back and nurture them and I will be able to get plenty. When you visit Namu City as a guest, I will give you 10. Luoya immediately pointed out her identity as a Class 1 creation master and expressed her goodwill to Lin Yuan. She then changed the topic and asked, "That's right. You said that you and your retainer got separated because of the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift. Could your Fae have been injured by the alien insect's attack? If it was injured, I can help your Fae to heal it now." Lin Yuan shook his head in response. "I didn't summon my Fae at that time. My Fae doesn't have any combat ability, so it is useless to summon it." When Lin Yuan answered Luoya's question, his mind was no longer thinking about object-holding walnuts. Instead, he was thinking about the object-holding walnut tree that could produce object-holding walnuts. Lin Yuan had never seen a plant-type object-holding walnut tree before, so he wasn't sure what kind of conditions the object-holding walnut tree had to meet in order to produce object-holding walnuts. If it was in the past, Lin Yuan would still need to think of a solution. However, Lin Yuan now had Feng Shuang, Old He and Hu Tian who were Class 4 creation masters. In addition, when Genius executed its abilities, it also had the ability to become a Class 4 creation master. With 4 Class 4 creation masters and the 100 Questions Beast Legion, after obtaining the walnut tree, they would soon be able to harvest a large number of walnuts. If the walnut tree was easy to split and cultivate, he could even cultivate a small walnut forest. Upon hearing that, Luoya's eyes turned and she asked softly in a very expectant tone. "Your Fae isn't adept at combat, so it must be a support type or healing type Fae. Big brother, I want to take a look at your Fae. Can I? I can't take it anymore. My body is really uncomfortable. Tomorrow during the day it would be even more troublesome. Good night everyone." End of chapter. Chapter 1179. When Lin Yuan heard Luoya's words, he couldn't help but raise his brows. Luoya's expression was shy and expectant, as though she had not asked to see the Fae but something else. In the past, if someone wanted to see his Fae, Lin Yuan would definitely not agree. It was even more impossible to summon his Fae. However, since Lin Yuan had decided to establish a relationship with Luoya, it was fine to summon the Fae to show his foundation. However, he did not know which one he should summon since he had so many Faes. After all, Lin Yuan had a few Faes that matched the healing type and support type without combat ability. Lin Yuan, who was in deep thought, did not slow down or immediately summon the Fae. Luoya did not feel anything about Lin Yuan's actions. Luoya had already determined that Lin Yuan was a noble. If he was not a noble, he would not be able to wear this attire, let alone have such an aura. Each gem produced in Class 1 and Class 2 underground dimensional rifts was worth about 30 deep Brahmin dollars. The difference in prices of gems of different colors would not be much, and it would only fluctuate within 10 deep Brahmin dollars. Lin Yuan's clothes were covered in mud, and the material could not be seen. However, there were at least 40 to 50 gems embedded in it. In total, the cost of the gems used to make this garment was around 1,200 to 1,500 Brahmin coins. Therefore, if this spirit chi clothing was sold in a store, it would be sold for at least 2,000 deep Brahmin dollars. Luoya could also afford to wear such clothes. However, if the clothes were damaged like this because of an accident, Luoya would definitely be reluctant. After observing along the way, Luoya found that Lin Yuan did not show any reluctance because of the damaged clothes. It was as though the damaged clothes were not worth mentioning to Lin Yuan. Luoya had already determined that Lin Yuan was a noble, but she still wanted to see his Fae. The reason was that Luoya wanted to use Lin Yuan's Fae to determine his noble status. If Lin Yuan was really a disciple of a hidden clan that had come out to train, then his contracted Fae would definitely be very outstanding. After Lin Yuan ate the bread smeared with the venom from the gold carrion scorpion's tail, Foodie's mentality was completely relaxed. The carrion scorpion's poison was a kind of chronic poison, and it would first destroy the poisoned person's nerves, so that the poisoned person would not discover that he had been poisoned because of physical discomfort. Depending on the strength of the victim's constitution, the poison of an ordinary gold-rank carrion scorpion would take effect within 2 to 3 hours. Since he was using the peak gold-rank carrion scorpion venom, the time for the venom to take effect would be reduced to 2 hours. 2 hours was enough for the army to reach the Deep Vendor Federation's caravan. After the poison took effect, Lin Yuan would turn into a pile of rotten flesh, and his entire body would emit a foul smell. There were many people at the gathering organized by the Deep Enlightenment Federation's caravan, and there were also plenty of spirit chi professionals from the Iron Hammer Federation. Given Luo Ye's character and temper, she would definitely take revenge for the person she fancied. However, given Fu Di's understanding of Luo Ye, she would definitely not personally check on his body that had turned into rotten flesh. There was a high chance that Roha would assign him to this job. Once he was done with the investigation, he could naturally push the blame to the Deep Lush Federation's caravans or the Iron Hammer Federation's spirit chi professionals. Driven by anger, Luo Ye would immediately kill the Deep Lush Federation's caravans and the Iron Hammer Federation's spirit chi professionals. At that time he would only need to put in more effort to take revenge for Lin Yuan, and not only would he not be suspected by Luo Ye, he might even receive some rewards from Luo Ye. Without Lin Yuan, Luo Ye would probably take back her heart and would no longer leave the Dry Cliff Bandit King team. After making up his mind, Fu Di looked at Lin Yuan and felt that he was no different from a dead person. However, when he saw Luo Ye's request to see his Fae, Lin Yuan seemed to be very hesitant. Fu Di could not help but mock. "Brother, no matter how weak your Fae is, you shouldn't be embarrassed to summon it, right? Take a look at Big Brother's Fae. If you could obtain Big Brother's protection in the Class 1 Alien Insect Dimensional Rift, you wouldn't be in such a sorry state like before." As he spoke, Fu Di proudly summoned his gold-ranked level 7 flesh-devouring vine. Fu Di's flesh-devouring vine was over 3 meters long, and it was a thick brownish-red vine that looked like a spirit snake. There were many suction cup-like tissues growing on the vine. These suction disc-like tissues could easily scrape flesh from the target after wrapping around it. However, when Lin Yuan looked at Fu Di's flesh-devouring vines, he felt that Fu Di's flesh-devouring vines were inferior to Red Thorn's gluttonous vines. The gluttonous vine could also rely on the acid in Red Thorn's body to corrode and digest flesh, while the flesh-devouring vine could only rely on brute force to scrape the flesh of its target. Even if such a phase grade was upgraded, as long as it didn't encounter a fortuitous encounter like a bloodline mutation. With a single attack method and functionality, this Fae was destined to be weak in complex environments and sudden situations. As for Fu Di's claim that with his protection he wouldn't be in such a sorry state when facing the Class 1 Alien Insect Dimensional Rift, it was even more nonsensical. Under the tide of alien insects accumulated in the Class 1 Dimensional Rift, Fu Di's gold/elite flesh-devouring vine might be able to kill some alien insects in the beginning. However, he was unable to effectively replenish his energy. Facing the flood of alien insects that would not stop at all, the devouring vine would soon be trampled by the swarm of insects into a pile of mud. Back then Xan Ying and Zhang Xiaobai both had gold phase. Xan Ying's and Zhang Xiaobai's gold phase were much stronger than Fu Di's. However, an ordinary gold phase was so small in front of the alien insect tide. Even 20 gold phase would be wiped out by the Class 1 alien insect tide, unless there was a power with a qualitative change that could take charge of the overall situation. For example, Spirit Guard Dong Hai's Platinum/Epic Shadow Dire Wolf. This was also why Red Thorn had been so shocking when it had spawned the Sea of Flowers to fight against the alien insect tide. Fu Di had already poisoned himself 3 times. Lin Yuan didn't intend to let Fu Di survive after this trip. Lin Yuan's disregard made Fu Di, who had a flaunting expression, look very embarrassed. When Fu Di mocked Lin Yuan, Luo Ye frowned and glared at him. No matter what, Fu Di was someone who was on the same trip as her. Fu Di's words to Lin Yuan would easily cause him to have negative emotions toward her. In order to protect her image in Lin Yuan's heart, Luo Ye hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Your clothes are dirty and you haven't washed them yet. Summoning the Fae will likely dirty it. Why don't you?" Just as Luo Ye was thinking of a way to smooth things over, the youth raised his hand. A white cat with many tails appeared in the youth's arms. End of this chapter. Chapter 1180. A person's preferences would often depend on their living environment. It could be said that the Divine Wood Federation's ordinary people were all silk lovers and pursued all kinds of clothing and supplies made of phase silk threads. The nobles, without exception, were all fur lovers. The Divine Wood Federation's nobles would often collect precious fur coats and use them to make carpets and curtains. It was just like how the Radiance Federation's members liked to place ornaments made of completely jade-textured wood at home as a facade. Luo Ye was also a member of the Divine Wood Federation's nobles, so she was naturally no exception. Luo Ye, who was a fur lover, looked at the cat with many tails in Lin Yuan's arms and couldn't help but let out a cry. Apart from wearing fur products, the Divine Wood Federation's noble's other dream was to raise a pet with beautiful fur at home. Luoya raised a few small beasts in Namu City. However, those small beasts could only have pure-colored fur at most, and the fur quality couldn't be compared to the cat in Lin Yuan's arms. The cat's fur was as white as the snow in the Iron Hammer Federation's north. The cat's blue eyes were even purer than expensive Paraiba tourmalines. What fascinated Luoya the most was this cat Fei's 8 long tails. Each of the 8 long tails was much longer than the cat's body, and the tails had a silk-like texture when they swayed softly. Luoya had never seen any animal's fur as soft as this cat's. After this 8-tailed snow-white cat Fei was summoned by the youth, it acted coquettishly to the youth. It used its 8 tails to gently caress the youth's spirit chi clothes that were covered with mud. The movement of the cat's tail was clearly very gentle, but it seemed to have a lot of magic. In a few moments, it cleaned up the dirt on Lin Yuan's spirit chi clothes. Upon seeing Lin Yuan's clean spirit chi clothes, Luoya immediately blushed and lowered her head. Through the opening on the spirit chi clothes, Luoya could faintly see Lin Yuan's wheat-colored skin. Lin Yuan reached out to rub Genius's small head, and Genius immediately meowed with a childish voice. After a series of choices, Lin Yuan finally decided to summon Genius. At first, Lin Yuan had chosen Blackie, Purple Firmament, and Genius. However, Blackie had a huge body and was a flying-type Fei. With Blackie around, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state when encountering a Class 1-dimensional rift. The Purple Cloud might be a flying-type Fei, but as a butterfly that was the size of 2 palms, it was destined to be unable to carry a person. It was in line with Lin Yuan's standards. The reason he did not summon the Purple Cloud was that the Blue Flash Butterfly also existed in the Divine Wood Federation. Naturally, there were also legends about the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly. It was true that Zishao had evolved from the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly bloodline to the Purple Sky Fairy Butterfly bloodline. However, if someone had seen the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly's picture book, they would easily notice that the butterfly patterns on the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly's wings were very similar to the butterfly patterns on Zishao's wings. However, the butterfly patterns on Purple Firmament's wings were much more beautiful than those on the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly's wings. In the end, it was best to summon Songming. Lin Yuan didn't know if the Divine Wood Federation had 100 Questions Beast, but there were plenty of feline Feis in the entire Agawan continent. After Genius grew multiple tails, it no longer had the general characteristics of 100 Questions Beast. As long as Genius didn't speak, even if someone saw and possessed 100 Questions Beast, they wouldn't treat Genius as 100 Questions Beast. Genius, which was in Fudi's embrace, was like a resounding slap to Fudi's face. It caused Fudi to summon the flesh-devouring vine and boast about himself to completely vanish. At the same time, Fudi was silently rejoicing that he didn't impulsively make a move on Lin Yuan. Under Fudi's perception, he realized that he couldn't sense the strength of the feline Fei in Lin Yuan's embrace. This meant that this feline Fei's grade and quality were at least a grade higher than his flesh-devouring vine. It also meant that the feline Fei in Lin Yuan's embrace was at least at platinum. Fudi wasn't a creation master, and a simple inspection wouldn't be able to see Genius's quality. However, Fudi knew that even if the feline Fei in the youth's embrace was a normal Fei, it wasn't something that his flesh-devouring vine could defeat. This feline Fei might not have any offensive ability, but as a beast, its body definitely wasn't weak. If Lin Yuan angered this feline Fei, which was at least at platinum, the feline Fei's hidden claws would be able to create 5 lacerations with a single swing. Fudi was silently rejoicing as he looked at Lin Yuan. Hehe, so what if your Fei is incredible? Anyway, I have already witnessed you eating the bread that was smeared with the gold carrion scorpion poison. You will definitely die within 2 hours. Once Lin Yuan was dead, this feline Fei would also die with its owner. Fudi was planning to use his exquisite skinning skills to remove this feline Fei's fur without any damage. If he sold this feline Fei's fur, it would be enough for him to eat for the rest of his life. As for the spoils of war that he was about to obtain, Fudi was rather curious. Brother, your cat's quality isn't low. Has it reached epic? When Luoya saw Lin Yuan summon this feline Fei, she firmly labeled him as a descendant of the Deep Lush Federation's hidden aristocratic clan. Genius appearance made Luoya realize that Lin Yuan's level was much higher than hers, although Luoya wasn't sure to what extent. However, Luoya estimated that the hidden aristocratic clan that Lin Yuan was in had at least a Class 3 creation master overseeing it. After confirming Lin Yuan's identity as a hidden aristocratic clan's descendant, Luoya was happy but also very perturbed. Luoya was afraid that her Class 2 family background would become an obstacle between her and Lin Yuan. Luoya, who had grown up in Nanmu City, wasn't confident about her identity for the first time. Luoya took a deep breath. It was time to show her true skills. She, a noble lady who had been fawned on since young, was going to try to be a bootlicker in order to gain Lin Yuan's favor. At the same time, Luoya had a murderous intent toward Di and the entire Dry Cliff Bandits. Fu Di and the Dry Cliff Bandits had always been looking for toys for her and knew how unbearable she was. After confirming that she couldn't control Lin Yuan, Luoya had to do her best. She wanted to eliminate all possibilities of Lin Yuan knowing that she was unbearable. Luoya was a ruthless person, even though she had stayed in the Dry Cliff Bandits for a few years. However, everyone in the Withered Cliff Bandits, including Fu Di, were just tools in Roha's heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 1181. Upon hearing Fu Di's question, Luoya felt that her tool was simply too inexperienced. Luoya was a Class 1 creation master and had limited abilities. She wasn't able to see through Genius Diamond strength. However, Luoya could sense the presence of willpower from Genius, which was in Lin Yuan's embrace. This meant that the cat in his embrace was a fantasy breed fae. Luoya sighed. How could a person be so outstanding? Lin Yuan came from a reclusive noble family. He was handsome and talented. He was the perfect ideal for a young girl's dream lover. Along the way, Luoya kept talking to Lin Yuan, and Fu Di didn't continue to follow them to make things uncomfortable. It looked at Lin Yuan with a sinister gaze while looking at Genius Fur with a greedy gaze. Gradually, they discovered a few strange insects along the way. Since there were no powerful faes in the forest, these alien insects, which had been pushed away by the source sand earlier, were lucky enough to survive. Upon seeing Lin Yuan and the others, it immediately roared and charged forward. In the end, these insects naturally died at the hands of the Dry Cliff Bandits. What surprised Lin Yuan was that these alien insects, which he could casually pinch to death, were actually very powerful. The members of the Dry Cliff Bandits were all injured to varying degrees. Lin Yuan now knew the strength of the Dry Cliff Bandits. After trekking under the afterglow of the setting sun, Lin Yuan finally saw over 200 tents at the end of the forest. In front of each stall, there was a black-haired and black-eyed vendor selling his wares enthusiastically. The vendors hawked their wares while collecting their customers' supplies. This scene made Lin Yuan feel as though he had returned to the Redbud City Xia region's Fei wholesale market. Luoya originally wanted to introduce the situation of these small caravans that wandered between the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation. Even if Lin Yuan was a descendant of a hidden aristocratic clan and had just gone out to train, he should still know the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan rules. Thus, Luoya did not mention it to Lin Yuan. The arrival of more than 300 people at this small gathering immediately attracted the attention of the caravan. The guards in the caravan immediately summoned their faes to be on guard. At a glance, he found that most of the Deep Lush Federation's faes were at peak bronze. There were only a few silver-ranked beasts. With such strength, it was no wonder that the Withered Cliff Bandits had set their sights on him. However, if the two sides clashed, the Dry Cliff Bandits wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. Fu Di and a few of the core members with silver faes wouldn't be in danger, but the weaker members were destined to lose a portion of them in the life-and-death battle with the merchant group's guards. Lin Yuan estimated that as long as the caravan's guards put in some effort, the Dry Cliff Bandits would lose at least 100 members. Even with such losses, the Dry Cliff Bandits still had the courage to plunder caravans. From this, it was enough to see that the people of the Shockwave continent were valiant. The Spirit Chi professionals were all living on the edge of a knife. In the Radiance Federation there were rules for everything. Even an Emperor-class expert wouldn't dare to make a move in the royal capital. Blood feuds between factions also needed to be resolved in the Extreme Arena through the Blood Oath Extreme Battle. However, the rules no longer had any binding force when they reached the boundary of the Agawan continent. In other words, there weren't any so-called rules in the Awan continent. Everything he did was so uninhibited. The Dry Cliff Bandits had originally planned to plunder the merchant group. This was because Luoya had taken a liking to Lin Yuan, and he was from the Deep Brahmin Federation. Fu Di had no choice but to disguise the Dry Cliff Bandits' identity and intentions. Fu Di planned to wait for Lin Yuan's death to be blamed on the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan. He would plunder the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan according to the original plan. Therefore, Fu Di couldn't be bothered to perform the act of negotiating with the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan. Luoya, who was from a two-star family, wasn't interested in such a small caravan. Lin Yuan was the happiest in the gathering. He walked to the first stall and used true data to take a look. He realized that there were plenty of spiritual ingredients, fruits, and plant phase that he had never seen before. There were also some clay jars. It was obvious that these things were produced in the Divine Wood Federation. When he saw that 90% of the people in the gathering were wearing armor, he knew that they were from the Iron Hammer Federation, which was rich in metal resources. It was no wonder the Deep Brahmin Federation's guards had such a huge reaction when they arrived. It seemed that this gathering was not held for the Divine Wood Federation but for the Iron Hammer Federation. Although these things that he had never seen before were novel, they had no effect under true data. They couldn't pique his interest either. Only the things inside the clay jars couldn't be seen through the surface of the jars. Thus he reached his hand into the clay jars. Just as his hand was about to touch the clay jars, his hand was hit by a thick palm. "Kid, don't you know that you can only look and not touch things that you don't want to buy?" When Lin Yuan's hand was hit, he subconsciously lifted his head and saw the stall owner looking at him with a displeased expression. Upon seeing this, Luoya hurriedly came over. At the same time, she couldn't help but silently criticize the hidden aristocratic family. Even if the hidden aristocratic family wanted the younger generation to gain experience through training, they couldn't possibly not teach common sense, right? The hermit clan's ambitions were a little too big. After cursing silently, Luoya explained to Lin Yuan in a serious manner. When the Deep Brahmin Federation's caravan holds a gathering, the goods can't be touched. Once you touch it, you will either buy it or be blacklisted by the caravan and driven out of the gathering. When Luoya explained, she thought to herself, given Lin Yuan's identity, he was hit by such a small merchant. She really didn't know how he would take revenge. In the end, Luoya saw the youth in front of her smile and say apologetically, "Uncle, I'm sorry. It's my first time attending a gathering and I don't know the rules. I've caused you trouble. Uncle, what's in this clay jar?" The youth's sunny smile and sincere apology made the man a little embarrassed. Upon seeing Lin Yuan, the man couldn't help but think of his son who had died under the bandits' robbery the year before. At that time, his son had been about the same age as the youth in front of him when he had died. If he had still been alive, he would have been much stronger than the youth in front of him. The man's heart was filled with sorrow and sorrow. After sorting out his emotions, the man first explained why the goods couldn't be touched. "When we collect the goods, we will determine the quality of the goods in advance. The good quality goods will be kept and the bad quality goods will be returned. We strive to not let any inferior goods mix into the caravan." End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.